Ready for your weekly tech fix? Want to know how technology sets us free? Well, get ready because here it comes. Tired of boring specials about history, science, and technology? Then get on your best headphones because you might want to lay down for this. A Sovryn Tech special with the world's foremost anarchist technophile, Brian Sovryn. He has a huge, well, you know. And now, here's Brian.
Here I am, the Golden Stallion of the tech world, ready to give you a nice a special treat, a special release. And we love a special release on Sovryn Tech. You get to hear my tech panel from Keenevention. And not just my tech panel, you're getting bonus content. You're going to get the Bitcoin panel hosted by the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy, the producer of the show. Both panels went really, really well. After each panel that you listened to, they were about an hour long each, a little less. But after each panel, I will give you a little bit of commentary. I have some things I kind of want to add into what was said during these panels. But really, they turned out great. Keenevention was amazing. If you missed it, you definitely missed out. But here, I'm going to deliver the goods for you so you can kind of imagine you were there. There is going to be video coming out. I think you have to like the Keenevention page, Facebook page, and you will get notifications. If you choose get notifications on Facebook, you will get notifications as to when these videos come out. They'll also be on freekeen.com. Total thanks to Ian Freeman for putting this all together. He put together, it might be, I really enjoyed it. I was only there for one day, unfortunately, on Sunday, but I thought it was fabulous. I rank it right up there with just about any Liberty event I've attended. It had a great feel. It had a real, it actually had, the speakers were, granted, I'm talking about myself and, hey, I'm the Golden Stallion, whatever. But, I thought really informative information came out. Some really deep questions, some serious answers were also out there. So I'm as excited about this as I hope anyone else was. Anyway, here you go. You get the tech panel. Give it a listen. Enjoy. If you have any questions about what was asked or, about the tech panel, you know how to reach me. SovrynTech@riseup.net, or you can direct message me on Twitter. I am perfectly okay with that. All right. That's enough. And by the way, the introduction, because I was the presenter for the tech panel, so I was the moderator, and the intro that Ian Freeman gave me was top notch. So I really appreciated that. You're going to hear it in just a second. Enjoy. I'll be back with more after the panel.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to the afternoon sessions here at Keenevention. It's going to be a little bit different this afternoon. We've got kind of a tech theme, and we're going to hit you hard and fast with information because the tech panel and the Bitcoin panel are shorter than the other panels that we've had. Our afternoon session is kind of compressed compared to the other afternoon sessions. So instead of a 75-minute panel, we're going to have, I think, 45 or 50-minute panels here, so just under an hour. Hopefully, we'll be covering all kinds of interesting things, and I do want to remind you that later this afternoon there is a Rich Paul sine wave. It could be happening outside of the jail, across from the jail on Route 101. There'll be carpool leaving from here. If you want to go to that, James Cleveland, a.k.a. Robin Hood, will be out in the lobby just after our closing speaker. And so definitely stick around because the Bitcoin panel is coming up next. Bitcoin has been kind of the buzzword around here this weekend, so we'll have some experts here to talk to you about that. The tech panel is imminent, so if our panelists could please take the stage and have a seat at the table, I'd certainly appreciate it. Yep, there's four of you. No, that's not next, as in after. Sorry, the Bitcoin panel is following the tech panel. So come on up, have a seat, and I will introduce to you the moderator, the presenter of this panel. Now, if you've been paying attention to the Liberty movement, whether it's through media or however you've found out what's going on here, you might have found out about some of the technology that has been assisting us. Of course, One of the more conspicuous ones is this laser here that you'll see and you'll hear more about, and how the laser has been employed, I'm sure, and to what effect. Also, two-way radios. You've seen a lot of people with these two-way radios on around here today. It's a really critical tool for activists. Hopefully we'll talk about some of those things. Obviously computers and things like that, servers, camera systems. So there's a lot to cover, and who better to do it than the host of Sovryn Tech, Brian Sovryn. I don't know if there's anything I could say that could inflate his ego any more than it already is. So he hosts a great technology show. If you haven't checked it out, please do. Sovryntech.com? Okay, Sovryn, it's Sovryn, sovryntech.com. Brian Sovryn, thanks for coming in to Keenevention, and I'll let you introduce your panelists.
Thank you, Ian. Obviously, he already said, welcome everybody to Keenevention. It's my first day here, but I've heard it's been great. So I'm glad, and hopefully I won't disappoint, nor will my panelists. Of course, we made sure we brought the lasers, so that way, we have a little more excitement. Anyway, what I will do, actually, the panelists here, we have 4 great panelists. Very, very thank you all for coming and for being here. We'll start off with... you guys will have to share mics, or a couple of you will have to share a mic. But anyway, I'll let you guys relatively introduce yourselves. We'll start off with Steve Zemanek, if you want to grab it.
I'm Steve Zemanek. I live in Keene. I've lived in Keene for getting close to 4 years now. I'm basically an information technology guy. I do computer security stuff. I basically freelance right now.
You're also organizing the local 2600 meetings.
Yep, I started for those who aren't familiar, I think I have one in my bag here. There's a magazine called 2600. It's like a lot of computer security and stuff like that that's covered in it. And in the last page of the book, there's a list of meetings. So I decided to start one here in Keene for New Hampshire, and it's the first one that's started in New Hampshire. So next magazine should have it published in the back of it. So we've already had a few successful meetings, and once it's published, it'll probably be even more successful.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Also, we have Johnson Rice. Johnson, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. So I've been working with Free Talk Live for almost a decade now, on and off. I do design work, web design, some photography, and most recently I was the CTO of a fashion company by the name of DJ Bennett out of D.C. I'm now also freelancing, and I'm also, I ran my own computer repair business for a time, so that's sort of my technical qualifications.
Okay, we also have Jay Freeville. Jay?
Hi, I moved to New Hampshire about 2 years ago now. A former professional internet troll. Some would argue about the former part.
Very important activism.
About a decade ago, I used to do a lot of computer repair for a living. Now I spend a lot of time on the internet doing whatever. What else was I going to say? I can't remember.
Jay is also one of the most technologically knowledgeable guys
Yeah,
I've met.
if I get interested in a subject, I'll obsess about it for a while and try to learn everything, so I'm at least competent. So I know a little about a lot. So,
which is good advice, really, for anybody interested in activism, especially today in our computer-run world, to know as much as we can about technology, which is part of the reason that we're having this panel. And last, but by no means least, Bill Domenico.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bill Domenico. I'm a longtime resident of New Hampshire, not a native. I've been here for a little over 30 years. Found the Free State Project in 2008. My background is in electronic design. I'm a dabbler. I've been in electronics since I was 6 years old, basically before electronics existed. And I like to make things, and electronics, optics, and motion is where I dabble. So we'll talk later.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got just a series of questions we're going to go over with the panel. Then maybe we'll have time for a little Q&A. And we'll go ahead and start off with the very first question, and we can just go in order. What ways do you see technology being used in New Hampshire to push liberty forward? Now, that's a really broad spectrum thing, but I mean, if you want to keep your answer to, like, I mean, obviously the internet is incredibly important for getting information out. Bitcoin is, which, we'll save that for the next panel, is an incredibly important tool economically as well as in other ways. But other than that, what ways do you see technology really helping push liberty forward in New Hampshire? Steve?
Well, in one very obvious way, it seems like the majority of people who've heard about the Free State Project heard about it through the internet, or so it seems.
Right.
So it's a great information tool, obviously. That's probably the biggest thing. But organizing, the forums that have been started. Now people use Facebook a lot, but hopefully people get to something a little more decentralized and a little more secure. But it's been used in a lot of ways. So.
Yeah, so right now you definitely say technology is really allowing for the organization of liberty, especially in New Hampshire. In fact, it's interesting. I've heard a lot of people comment that, like you mentioned, Facebook. Facebook, I've always said, is really good for reaching out to people, long distances, keeping in touch. But it's amazing that, you can get to anywhere from anywhere in New Hampshire in about an hour. But it's amazing that even so, with Facebook perhaps being geared more towards, long distance relationships, it gets used all the time. If you want to know anything that's going on in New Hampshire, you have to be on Facebook. There's just with the activism and everything, it's kind of the tool to go. And I agree with you, Steve. I do hope that something decentralized or more secure ends up getting used in the future.
Well, one thing I did want to say is, I kind of treat it like a micro blogging platform more than I do communications. I don't like getting Facebook messages as a form of communications, especially if they're intended to be any bit of private.
Right.
One thing that I'm trying to get everybody to do who has a Facebook account right now is, a while back, if you were on Facebook a long time ago, it used to be able to publish your email address. So if you wanted to email them and not use Facebook, your email address was on your Facebook profile unless you turned it off. Facebook went around and they decided to take everybody's email address and change it to whatever their Facebook username is at facebook.com, and that was the new email address. So you can go and change it back to your normal email address, and I encourage everybody to do that. So if someone wants to send you an email outside of Facebook, they actually can, if they don't have your email address already.
Right, so you can stay in touch. So, Johnson, your thoughts? What exactly, what technology, how is it being used, do you think, to push liberty forward in New Hampshire?
I think technology in general in New Hampshire is primarily focused on communications of all different forms. Ian mentioned earlier the Baofeng radios, and those are being used. But I think also YouTube, podcasts, Facebook, all these things are really just different forms of communication, and they're being primarily used for that purpose. So I think in terms of communicating the ideas of liberty, New Hampshire is leaps and bounds ahead of a lot of the other areas of the country who are, trying to start their own liberty groups, because we have so much liberty media, so many podcasts, so many, video and YouTube shows, so many blogs and different forms, just all these different forms of ways that people are communicating these ideas. And also some of the stuff that I do, are like flyers and pamphlets and those types of things as well, which also require the use of technology and require, graphic softwares and whatnot as well. So, definitely I think that communication is how technology is primarily being utilized here to spread those ideas.
Sure. And, it's interesting because in New Hampshire in particular, the oldest technology to the newest technology seems to still be getting used as far as communicating, right down to, like you said, paper, pamphlets, whatever the case may be. all of it's fair game to be used here, and all of it's actually working. It's all actually getting the message out, I think it's fair to say. So, yeah, great point. Jay, what are your thoughts?
I think we need to find a cheap and effective way to reach the locals here, because most really don't use the internet. It's mostly young people here. There are tons of people, if you just go and talk to them, they're like, hey, I agree with you on most things.
Right.
And if we could somehow get to them in an effective manner, using whatever resources we have technology-wise, I think should be our main focus.
Okay, so to push, you want to reach out to the natives, the locals.
I'm not sure how we're going to do that, but
right. But I mean, certainly technology is the way to do that, and having all these different forms, like you said, Johnson, having all these different forms of communications being used, from flyers all the way up to Facebook.
I should also mention that there's also some of the cable access TV shows that are on
Right.
as well.
Okay. Yeah. There's
maybe they reach some of the locals. I don't know how much it's watched by college kids, but I'm sure that's also somewhat effective as well.
Sure. Bill, what are your thoughts on exactly how is liberty getting pushed forward through technology in New Hampshire?
I feel like I'm usually the outcast of the room when it comes to technology and liberty in this movement because of the preponderance of IT people. I'm not the IT guy. I am the hardware guy. I don't know anything about software beyond how to make my little gadgets work.
Well, this stuff has to get fixed.
No, I'm just saying. So yes, while I agree that the internet and technology in that direction is very important, and certainly communications, as I've got all these little radio samples here. I'm off Facebook. I can't stand giving Facebook all my messages. I've noticed that some of my friends have their email addresses at facebook.com.
Right.
I don't even want to send them a message because why should I give my information that I want to send to one of my friends to Facebook, right? My wife Gail, who a lot of you know, will say, hey, so and so just contacted me on Facebook. They want to know about this. Can I give them your phone number? No, I do not want you typing my cell phone number into Facebook, right? So I'm maybe it's paranoid, maybe not. I don't think it is anymore. I'm really not in favor of communicating on the internet if it's not encrypted. I'm sure we'll get into that later.
Yeah.
My focus is hardware. My focus is making things. I've been self-employed for 20 years. I'm hoping to stay self-employed until I can't be self-employed anymore. And I think that we can also communicate by making things that come from the liberty movement. For instance, I'm going to pass this around. Hey, Graham, would you grab these? These are little 3D printed FSP key rings that I printed the other day. Actually, over the course of about 2 days, because they take about 15 minutes to print. If I talk too long, please tell me to shut up. Probably a lot of people in the room have never had anything 3D printed in their hands. So you can see it's quite strong and substantial. But just as an aside, I put this out just so you can see that you can make things on the spur of the moment. I made FSPs, I made FTLs, I made the anarchy symbols that are in the back and the pink porcupines for the LGBT people, and everybody seems to get a kick out of it. But the thing is that when we go to someplace like Murphy's Tap Room on Tuesday and there's new movers, or there's people who come to say, I'm checking out Manchester. After I leave Manchester, I'm going to Keene. I might go somewhere else. We had a guy that was going to Wyoming after us to check out Wyoming. I said, when you get back, give me a call. You can stay with us for a while. And I'll give him one of these little 3D printed trinkets, and I think that has staying power because I don't think they're going to get a 3D printed, Free State Wyoming or...
Yeah, exactly. I think that's really impressive. I saw those earlier. I wasn't aware exactly what they were or how they were created. That makes them all the more impressive. Here it is. It has the message FSP. Okay, what's FSP? But then the message, how did that actually get made?
Exactly.
And it got made, by you.
Right. When you hand it to somebody, they don't really pay much attention to it. Oh, this is some cheesy key ring. But then you say, oh, it's made on a 3D printer. And they may have heard 3D printing, don't know anything about it. And so it gets the conversation moving immediately in that direction.
Absolutely. And actually, I'm glad you brought that up, Bill, because I think 3D printing is one of, next to Bitcoin, it may even be more important than the internet, though one could say it doesn't work so well without the internet to download plans, to print stuff out or whatever. But it is one of those things that now the means of buying are in the hands of everyday people now with Bitcoin. And the means of production are now in the hands of everyday people right here in New Hampshire. And like you said, yeah, you're not getting that in Free State, Wyoming, at least not that we know of. So that is a great point to bring up.
I don't consider myself a 3D printer fanatic. I mean, there's
Sure.
just people on the internet are saying this is the next best thing to slice bread and all that.
Right.
Yeah, it's going to get there. I don't believe it's anywhere near there yet.
Right.
But you can have some fun with it now. You can do some good things with it.
Yeah,
You can,
well, it's one way of getting the message out. Another thing I want to say is that, like you mentioned about how Facebook, you're not a big fan of that. I don't think Facebook can compete with getting a message out like that, at least not when you're right in front of it. You know what I mean? With
So, for example, the laser projector that you see, anybody that's been to PorcFest in the last few years has probably seen it. But what you may or may not know is that we use it at DUI checkpoints, suspicionless, warrantless checkpoints, as we like to call them. And there's nothing the police can do about it. So when you're in downtown Manchester and you've got this projecting on a building, and of course this is small right here, but we can make it 8, 10 feet high, 12 feet wide. It's the size of a billboard. And when you do that at night, it's unmistakable, and you can't go down the street without seeing it. And when it says checkpoint ahead, people take notice. And it started life as a Ron Paul gadget for his campaign in 2011. And we used it to project Vote Ron Paul on buildings all over the Northeast, and it was very effective. And then after the Ron Paul campaign, it became a tool for the Free State Project.
Sure.
So we projected it on the Valley Street Jail when Wes Gilraith was in jail. Sometimes we put up messages that I probably shouldn't say on the live on mic, but it has to do with blank the police.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, moving on to, some of this actually already got answered as far as what technologies do you feel are most helpful. I think, Bill, you touched on quite a few of those that are incredibly helpful. And like Steve, you mentioned, or Steve and Johnson, you both mentioned communications as being pretty helpful. So I think we covered a lot of that. I guess I want to skip to another question. We talked about what technologies are really helpful in being used. One I wanted to talk about, though, and I don't know if anyone on the panel wants to bring up about it, is pirate radio. Does anyone here want to comment on the effectiveness of that, the importance of that?
I may or may not have known somebody who ran a pirate radio station here in Keene. Actually, I would say it's a very, very effective. I heard so many people call into FTL. I used to listen to the station all the time Town was running, and they would be like, "Hey, I'm from Keene. I just heard you for the first time." And where else we haven't had that kind of effectiveness like through any other media that I've ever seen here. Through the internet or paper or anything, I would hear, at least once a week somebody call in and say they were from Keene and listen to the station.
Yeah, and this touches on what you were saying about reaching out to, local people.
Right.
And that's definitely, can't get any more local than that. That's amazing. So, so you do consider it effective?
Yes, of course it's illegal.
I was going to ask, what are the dangers?
You pretty much forget about trying to run it legally. It costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to do it. The worst I really have seen is somebody gets a letter in the mail. They'll stop by and they'll triangulate your signal and say, you better stop this within 10 days or you might do something else. So, and the worst I've really ever seen is equipment getting confiscated and an unenforceable $11,000 fine being applied. I've never heard of any attempts to collect that fine.
Okay.
So,
Johnson?
I'm not a very spiritual person, but there's something also very spiritual about having a pirate station on in the area, or just having, especially with it running LRN.FM. And there were a few months where, the station that was on before it was 94.3 in Keene, and that they were threatened by the FCC. And so it had to be taken down. The station has since returned to the air, actually 2 stations now. And the time period that it was off the air, it was just depressing. I mean, there's just something about being able to get in your car and turn on the radio and hear Liberty talk that is very uplifting. And knowing that that message is going out and people are being exposed to it. And when it went off the air, I mean, I was just... Every time I would get in my car, I would be reminded that it wasn't on the air, and I would be bummed out about it. And it was really uplifting to have that come back on the air. So I would say definitely pirate radio is extremely powerful, and it's, I mean, even as just a morale booster for activists.
Even just activists themselves. Yeah, I have to agree, because when I lived in Keene and I would just be walking around, people would have their windows down, and you could hear what they're listening to on the radio. And boy, if I heard LRN, or admittedly, even if I heard my own show, I'd be like, whoa. It was very exciting, and it definitely made you feel good and gave you a nice bolster to keep doing what you're doing.
I'd also be exposed just because, again, leaving it on in the car, I'd be exposed to other shows that I wouldn't normally hear, because I just get in and turn it on, and it's like, oh, what's this show? I mean, I was hearing stuff today that I wouldn't have necessarily gone and sought out as a podcast. So.
Absolutely. Jay?
Yeah, that same thing happened to me. I really don't listen to podcasts at all, very, very rarely, and I would just keep it on, and all this interesting stuff was happening when I wasn't listening.
No, it's incredible. The other point I want to bring up too with pirate radio, or with the radio technology in general, and this is something recently there was a caller into Free Talk Live that mentioned that they were using pirate data packet radio, which doesn't require an internet, yet you're sending data over radio signals, and that's something I'm kind of hoping will be used more in New Hampshire in particular, at least tested, because this person said that they actually were able to do a Bitcoin transaction over radio, which, I mean, that's really, really exciting and answers a lot of things. Bill, did you have something you wanted to?
Yeah, I did want to mention another pitfall that probably might be surprising is that there was a pirate radio station in Manchester for a while. It hasn't been up for longer than it actually was up, but while it was up, it had extremely good coverage. You could get it anywhere in the Manchester area or the edge of the surrounding towns. And echoing what you said, it was great to get in the car and turn it on. My car radio was always on that channel. I heard all kinds of stuff I never would have heard before. So that was great. But the interesting thing was the takedown of the station. And it didn't come directly from the FCC. It came from a bunch of kids who have a website, which is, the name escapes me at the moment, where they listen for pirate FM radio stations. So their sole goal in life is every morning when they get up is they tune the FM band, and they make note if there's any station there that wasn't there the last time they did the check. And if there is, they contact each other and they go, hey, where's this station? You know, they're all across New England. And they found the station, the pirate radio station in Manchester, probably within a week or two of when it was up. And they would blog on their website that, hey, go to such and such street and look up in the air. You'll see the antenna when they found the antenna. So they actually put forth to the FCC that we were operating a station in Manchester. The FCC didn't find it themselves. So you got to put up with these nanny people, that are out there.
Are they ham operators?
They may have been. Some were ham operators, and some of them were legitimate radio station engineers who feel that it's not right for us to be able to broadcast without paying exorbitant fees and having sponsors and all of that. So
we had a local radio station producer here, or some higher level management, or I think he was former, and he said, "Hey, I think what you guys are doing are great," So,
yeah, when local people, even people that aren't liberty minded, are supporting what you're doing, obviously that's fantastic. Okay, so that's great. I mean, I think a pretty clear message here is that communications is incredibly important. Technology is, in many ways, it seems to be the key to that, to getting, to mass communication and getting the message out to everybody, not just around the world, but particularly right here, like you say, to native people in New Hampshire and locals. And so my next question, though, is, everybody's heard about PRISM. Everybody's heard about the Snowden revelations, where pretty much we found out that the NSA, the United States government, is listening or recording or keeping, pretty much every kind of electronic form, electronic data, whatever, that we're sending out. And they're watching it, and they're interested in it. Not to say that they have the manpower to keep an eye on everybody, but either way, they're trying to store it. Because of that, you're getting a lot of people who are saying, hey, maybe this whole technology thing is a bad idea. And maybe we need to, maybe we need to go back to stone knives and bearskins because technology is what's letting all these people control what you're doing. Do you have any thoughts on that, Steve, as to why that is perhaps yes? I'm open. It's okay if you say, yeah, no, that's true. We need to go back to some primitive time, or why you think that that's maybe bumkus.
When the Snowden thing came out, my reaction was people are surprised by this.
You're shocked that, like, wait, you didn't know?
Yeah,
Is that the idea? Okay.
I mean, when it first came out, it was getting reported one little item at a time. And it's been great because we don't really know how many documents he's released. And it turns out he's released a lot. And the newspapers are just, coming through one at a time. But I remember, I believe it was 2006, when the AT&T employee, Mark Klein, basically said, hey, I have these documents from these fiber optic splitters they wanted to be installed here in this data center. And it goes to this secret room that's run by people with top secret security clearances. It's kind of suspicious, don't you think? And, and then you go back to Kevin Mitnick. Johnson's probably going to talk about him a little bit because he's got two of his books on the counter here. Right?
Kevin Mitnick was at one point public enemy number one in the country in the 90s. He is the most notorious hacker in history, pretty much. Right.
Pretty much. But basically, in the early 90s, the California telephone system had a system built into it so the FBI could basically point and click and wiretap. They could just basically type in your phone number and start wiretapping you. Now, presumably, they would get the warrant before they started wiretapping you, but the control was under their control, essentially. They could wiretap whoever they wanted to, and it was basically, behave. We're going to give you this access, but you better behave. And that system actually got hacked, where other people were taking advantage of it besides just the feds. And but that was in the early 90s, where they can just point and click. They didn't have to climb a telephone pole and attach alligator clips to your telephone. People have been talking about. There's been rumors of fiber optic splitters in AT&T and the big telephone companies for a long time, or into the early 90s, and probably before that. So
essentially, they've been doing this for a really long time. They being the NSA, the government, whatever. They've been
and I
watching.
think basically the other thing that made me say, well, people are surprised about this is just read the Patriot Act. They basically say, yeah, we can wiretap you without a warrant now. We don't need warrant or even probable cause. They can just pretty much. It's just bizarre what they put in there, and people are surprised when they do what they say they're going to do in the Patriot Act.
Sure. So would you say that even since they've been doing this so long, the fact is that liberty is growing, the Free State Project is working, more and more people are moving here all the time, that even that since they are tracking all this information, it hasn't stopped. It hasn't stopped the idea. It hasn't stopped the people. It hasn't. Is that safe to say? So you're saying we should not be just dumping technology just because they're watching everything we do?
I don't think so. And I think basically, Phil Zimmerman, who wrote PGP, I forget what year it was he wrote PGP, but that was in the very...
It was 94, I think.
Was it 90? Okay.
Yeah.
But he wrote...
PGP is email encryption.
Yeah. It stands for Pretty Good Privacy, and it is, to this day, one of the best... it's become an open standard, so, but it's still, to this day, widely used email encryption standard.
And as far as we know, it hasn't been cracked.
Basically, it uses different algorithms, and some of the earliest versions, like back in the 90s, have been cracked, but it's very, very secure. But he wrote it because he was a peace activist, and he was worried about the government intercepting his emails in the early 90s. So it's been going on for a long time, and the thing is, the technology is out there to protect yourself. Now the problem is there's no silver bullet. There's not, it's not like just install this software and everything's, going to be secure.
Right.
You have to, you can't just say, I'm going to use Tor and that's going to keep me secure. You have to basically be very conscious about where your data is going, how your data is being transferred, and who it's being transferred to. If you're putting your data onto someone else's server, whoever runs that server has access to your data.
Sure.
So,
Okay, well, let's talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But Johnson, your thoughts, do you think that we should be running away from technology because it's something that seems to be so encroaching on us and maybe even trying to control our lives?
No, unless, of course, you want to be completely irresponsible. If you're going to be irresponsible with technology, then, yeah, you probably shouldn't be using it. That includes driving a car. But I mean, originally, I don't think you phrased the question this way, is the way, when we provided the questions, but I think one of the ways is you said something specifically about whether, if using technology and computers is safe. And I guess, my immediate answer to that would be, well, what do you consider safe? And taking a Luddite approach. And I kind of feel like, Bill, you almost took a little bit of Luddite approach by saying, I won't use Facebook. Don't send me your cell phone number over Facebook. And while I completely support you and I kind of agree with that sentiment on one level, on another level, I kind of say, well, you're not secure if you communicate online, period, in general. If you're not willing to spray photons on a wall, you shouldn't probably be putting it on the internet either. Unless you're using some kind of encryption, because generally the internet is a public place. And, if you're putting something on Facebook, it's going to be just as public if you publish it on a blog. It's probably just as public if you put it in an email, in terms of if, either your ISP could read it, or the company that you're sending your email through could potentially read it, or the server administrator who's running your email server could read it, or a government can get a court order to read it. So unless you're using encryption to secure your data, it's just as good as spraying it on a wall with a laser, because someone's going to be able to read it. So don't do illegal things on the internet if you want, you want to remain private. Don't do things you don't want people knowing about on the internet. Bringing up Kevin Mitnick, I think one of the conversations that I think needs to be had amongst more technologically oriented liberty activists, and especially liberty activists, because I hear this so often from the liberty community talking about how encryption and computer security, they talk about it in a way like that's the end of the story. It's not the end of the story at all. In fact, it's not even the beginning of the story, because the way security is most often broken has nothing to do with computers at all. It has to do with the human element. It has to do with, social engineering and just being tricked. Hello, my name is Fred. I'm calling from the telephone company. We need to test your line. I'm calling to ask a survey. I actually hung up on a survey taker the other day because they started asking me questions because they wanted to do a political survey in New Hampshire and ask people what they wanted to, just personal political questions. And I said, well, who's funding this study? Because they said it was a survey. And they said, we can't answer that because it would bias the study. And I said, well, then I can't answer any more questions. Because I'm not going to just give out political information about myself to someone on the phone who I don't know and who I don't know who they're being funded by. That could be just some random person using social engineering on me to get information about me. I have no idea who that person is, so I'm not answering their questions. And more people need to be vigilant in that way, especially if you're working for a company, because that's most likely how a hacker is going to get you. They're going to ask you, there's a study out there that says something like 70 or 80% of people will give their password away for a candy bar. That's typically how a hacker gets access to something, and that's typically how security is broken, and that's how your security will be broken too, is someone will either send you to a fake website where you've got an interest in, you put your password in, they've got your password. And a lot of people are using the same exact password on every single website. If you do that, chances are you've gone to a fake website and someone has gotten your password at some point, and now they have your password to everything. So,
Yeah, that's a good point about social engineering. If you're not exactly sure what social engineering is, social engineering could be something as simple as a security guard sitting at AT&T, and then essentially a hacker, or what actually should be more properly termed, say, a cracker, if they were doing something actually nefarious. They would call in and they would say, hey, I got to get this into my boss at AT&T tomorrow real quick. Could you just give me the password to get into the network? And then the security guard will give them the password. So there's no actual code being done at all. It's all just being done by getting information human to human, which I agree is kind of the way that gets done. Steve, did you have something you want to add real quick?
The other thing is one of the leading causes of data loss is theft. I mean, if your laptop's sitting in your car, it's pretty easy to grab your laptop, and now they have your data, unless you're using full disk encryption.
Sure. Which is, that's another.
If you want, there's basically, if you're running Windows, probably the easiest way to encrypt everything on your laptop is a program called TrueCrypt, which is open source, and it's currently in the process of being thoroughly audited for security purposes.
Right.
Because basically no one's done a very thorough audit of the source code to make sure there's no backdoors, but as far as anybody who's really looked at it has said, there's no backdoors that they could find, but no one's gone through line by line because it is thousands and thousands of lines of code.
Sure, it's something the FBI has tried to crack computers that are using,
failed,
and it took them months.
And basically, once you install it, you basically you turn on your laptop. It asks you for a password, and it has to be a really good, really long password that you're not going to forget. Because once you forget it, kiss your data goodbye. But you got to be able to remember it, and no one else can guess it. And as long as it's long enough and complex enough, no one's ever getting in there.
It should be better referred to as a passphrase.
Passphrase,
yes, that's what you want to use.
Yeah, because it's not really a word. Long. Don't use a word.
Especially important if you have any kind of bitcoins out there. Make sure you're secure with your bitcoins. Yeah, there's a lot of theft and fraud. I know someone who lost about $30,000 when his bitcoins were stolen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one simple way to keep for example, if you're using Bitcoin, or if you do have super sensitive information, have a dedicated computer for your Bitcoin transactions, and don't go on Facebook or any web browsing or anything on that computer. Just use it for going to your bank and going to Bitcoin related stuff, and leave it at that.
Sure, good idea. Jay, I want to get to you. Do you have, as far as the idea of should we be shunning maybe even just certain technologies? Are computers safe to use for activists? What are your thoughts?
If you had asked me a decade ago about swearing off this kind of technology, I would say yes. But now I realize how important it is, communication and whatever else. It's part of our lives. You can't really ignore it these days. So it's pretty easy to secure yourself out there. And we can do lots of things to do that. And there's lots of open source software out there we can use. So yeah, I don't think we should be Luddites. I think we should just be more vigilant of how we're communicating, and we're not breaking any laws by most of our communications.
Right.
We just how to bring liberty to New Hampshire. There should be nothing illegal or about that. So.
Right. So you're not saying at all. No, let's not dump computers. Let's not dump this tech. Let's just understand it. Let's take control of it for ourselves, which is interesting. Things like even rooting tablets, an Android tablet or an iPad, that's illegal to do, admittedly. But it is one of the ways in which you can take control of your technology and actually do everything you really want to do with it. And so to understand technology at that level, it's not hard, and I think I agree, it is important. That's just an example of a way to do that.
Violating someone's copyright is not necessarily a violation of the law, though. It's not necessarily legal.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that's kind of up in the air.
You might get sued, but that doesn't necessarily make it a crime.
Yeah, right. Fair enough. Jay, did you have something else?
I just want to add, they busted the Silk Road guy, Dread Pirate Roberts.
Yep.
And they went in around July 15th. They broke into his house because he got fake ID or something, and mysteriously a week later they had access to the Silk Road server. So what did they plant? How did they get that? They installed as simple as a camera in his place. So even if you have all the security, which I'm sure you may have, something as simple as that can defeat it.
Right. So something is, 100, 150-year-old technology as a camera, essentially, is what actually broke modern-day encryption. Bill,
I'd like to say something on this. I've been talking to several people that are Free State Project members about encryption in the past few weeks, and so I've taken a little look into it, and you can have your hard drive, your cell phone, whatever, but let's just keep it to laptops or computers in general. You can have your hard drive encrypted up the yazoo. You can have the longest passphrase known to man, okay? When they come for your computer and they take it, who cares if they can't crack it? They don't have to bring the power of a supercomputer to bear. All they got to do is crush your finger in a vise. All they have to do is tell you that I'm going to kill J.J. Schlesinger in 30 seconds if you don't give up your password. And after I kill him, I'm going to kill Graham right there. What are you going to do? Are you going to give up your password, or are you going to say, no, you can't have my password?
And not even anything as extreme as that. They'll keep you in jail until they get it.
Exactly.
There's, I think, at least two in recent memory that people have done that to.
So I looked up some of the laws regarding whether or not you have to give up your password, and there seems to be a mixed bag. Some areas they say you don't. Some places you do. Like I think in England you have to.
Right.
And I saw an interesting analogy, and it said that in the old days you take your document that you didn't want somebody to see, and you go, it goes through the shredder, right? And hopefully a nice cross-cut shredder, so it's this confetti that comes out. Okay, so the feds come in tomorrow, and they grab my wastebasket, and they go, aha, we've got all these documents. They pour them out on the table, and they say, okay, Bill Domenico, you have to reassemble all these documents. We want to know what they say. All right? It's pretty much impossible. They cannot force me to do that, right? So it's very secure. So the analogy is that when there's a school of thought, I don't know how it's going to stand up legally, but the school of thought is that when your documents get onto your hard drive and they've been encrypted, they no longer exist as documents. They're just random data on your hard drive. So therefore, they can't demand for you to recreate the documents because there's a precedent that says if you turn over, if they get evidence from you, the government, when I say they, I'm talking about the government or some entity that's got power over you. When they get evidence from you from whatever means, if they don't understand the evidence, they cannot force you to explain it to them.
Right.
Okay, which I didn't know. I only learned that last week. Okay, so I could have a formula that says, some terrible thing, blah, 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 and they could have the data, they could have the formula in their hand.
Right, but if they don't know what that means.
It's so bizarre they don't know what it means. It could be in code. Look, our forefathers used code when they were writing the Bill of Rights.
Right.
So you cannot be forced to explain the evidence against you if they don't understand it. So I think that's a good way to attack not having to give out your password.
Sure.
One good feature of good encryption software, such as TrueCrypt, which does have it, is called plausible deniability. In TrueCrypt, what you can do is you can have two separate volumes.
You can have a TrueCrypt file inside of a TrueCrypt file, right?
Essentially, and basically what happens is it'll be the same volume with two passwords. The passwords you give to someone under duress, and the real password that has the that has your actual secret. So like you might just put like your credit card bills and stuff on one volume, and then put your super secret Silk Road dealing on another.
Sure. Yeah,
and you can have multiple secret volumes too, so you can really screw that up.
Okay, so we've kind of, Bill, did you want to?
Yeah, I just want to address that. Once again, I'm not buying into this multiple secret volumes. I've read all of this. Yeah. All right. I'm not an expert on it by any means. I don't mean to step on your toes, Steve. You know way more on this than I do. But multiple secret volumes, my ass. When they come in my house and they say, give me your computer because you got plans to make a 3D printed pistol on your computer, and we want those plans. Where's your Liberator drawings and your G-code file? And I say, gee, I don't have it. I got it from somebody else. I bought it from JJ. I didn't print it, honest. Okay? And I keep bringing up JJ because he's looking right at me.
He's the Liberty mastermind in
and
New
he's just
Hampshire.
trouble. I mean, he's trouble wherever he goes. A 30-round mag. We found a 30-round mag in your car. Where did you get it? Those have been illegal for 2 years. We think you printed it on your printer. We want to find the plan. So once again, I give him my neat little encrypted computer with a volume within a volume. They're not fools. They're going to know. Yeah, he's given us the volume within a volume trick. Crush his other finger. I still say they're going to get the information if they want it.
Johnson?
Yeah, I may have an unpopular opinion to express here because I
love unpopular
I happen to have those plans on my computer, and I happen to have been one of the first people to jump on board with seeding a torrent of those files.
Those are the actual liberators.
That's an actual
the
liberator.
3D printed deal. Yep. That is amazing.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, I have, and I was one of the first people to jump on with the torrent for that, and I personally seeded over 120 some odd copies of it, like full copies. So many more people at least got parts of the file from me. And the unpopular opinion is I am a strong proponent of security through obscurity, which a lot of technical people will tell you exactly you don't want to rely on security through obscurity. What that means is that if you're in a large enough crowd and you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing, if there are enough other people around you, you're probably just not going to get noticed. It's basically the primary principle on how torrenting copyrighted material works, is that there's millions of people who do it. And I openly admit I do it. I'm openly admitting that I seeded the plans for the 3D printed weapon. And the reason why I'm able to openly do that is because I know that a bunch of other people did it, and I'm not concerned about those types of things. Those are types of things where I think I can rely on security through obscurity. I don't think anybody's going to come after me for having the plans for a 3D printed gun. I just
use it as a generic example. It could have been a nuclear weapon. It could have been a dirty bomb. Could have been
I think that those things
plans to do wood gasification, which is now illegal in 49 states.
I think I would do wood gasification. I don't think that I would seed the plans for a nuclear weapon because I do think that someone would come after me for that. And I think that those are the types of decisions that I think people need to make. Everybody's got to take their own personal level of risk, and that's what generally liberty activism in general is, that you're going to go out and take your own personal level of risk. And like I said earlier, I think everything that you do on the internet is generally public. So you really have to consider, is what I'm doing going to have some minions of the state come after me? And I know that's generally kind of an arbitrary question because they can come after you for whatever they want to. I mean, you have a plan for harvesting tobacco, they might come after with you. You have no idea. But I think that there's a certain level of responsibility that one needs to take where, if you're the Dread Pirate Roberts, for example, you don't have an open apartment where you're running, a Silk Road with roommates who have no idea. There's a certain level of security responsibility that you need to take for yourself. Otherwise you're asking to get caught.
Jay, any thoughts on this?
Nope.
No? Okay. The last question, a lot of which has already been touched on with TrueCrypt. The 3D printing, as in what actions do you think people should take in response to, government encroachment, or what actions, I'll add to the question, what actions do you think we should take, to help expand liberty more, which we kind of touched on at first, using all the different kinds of communications that we use. Again, TrueCrypt, I think, is if you're looking for some base level stuff, and Bill, you bring up great points, and I am 100% behind you on people not using Facebook anymore. I really am. But Johnson, did you have any beyond something like TrueCrypt? Do you think that there's a certain methods that people should be implementing in their lives? I think you already touched on a lot of it.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's just security. Just don't do illegal things online. Really, is generally the first thought I think of. But that would be the way I would express it. But I mean, that said, I do. you know. That said, I don't have cable, but I watch all the same shows you do.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'll fully admit it because I don't think they're coming after me for it.
Yeah.
I've been sent cease and desist letters in the past. I'm not on that internet connection anymore. Oh, well, I kept doing it, because millions and millions of people are torrenting content, and that's the way that's going to go until, these cable companies start allowing a la carte. I mean, until that happens, torrenting is going to happen, piracy is going to happen.
Yeah, I think you're raising a great point in that if you can't encrypt everything, and there is, Steve, would you say it's safe to say there's no perfect encryption in the world?
There's no perfect encryption in the world because you're not ever going to get everybody to use it at the same time. It's,
right.
Even in the Liberty circles, even with technical people in the Liberty circles, not everyone's using encryption. I mean, I have my PGP key on my business card, but I don't. There's very few people I know
that will actually
still I could send them a PGP message to. It's very few.
Sure. So a thought that I'd submit to everyone is that if encryption isn't perfect, because everybody has to use it, and not a lot of people are, is being as open as we can the answer? Is the exact opposite the way to, just having this perhaps a degree of transparency, like coming out and admitting, or like everybody just using torrenting or something? It's like, look, if you're going to arrest me, you got to arrest everybody. Or like with lasers, Bill, if everybody's using lasers, if everybody adopted, everybody started using it, well, how do you know it was mine?
By the way, it's totally illegal, I should have said that, to project these messages in public on buildings for a number of reasons, nothing that has to do with local sign ordinances like they might have you believe, but more on a federal level due to the FDA. But nobody ever questions that because they don't know locally.
Sure. So I'll ask you, Bill, and then I want to get to Jay's answer. Is there a technology, is there something not being used a lot that you feel should be used by activists in New Hampshire?
I think everybody should have a laser projector that's interacting with the public.
Yeah.
Or they want us to get a message out. We used it at the Bearcat. We had, as soon as the vote was approved for the Bearcat, we had fire the city council on a church steeple a quarter of a mile away in giant letters that you could see from all over downtown Concord. It's Bearcat for sale. I mean, you can just have your way. You can get your message out. There's nothing they can do to stop it. And so far, it doesn't seem to be any way that they can arrest you or anything like that for it.
Fair enough. Okay. Jay, you got any thoughts on technology to use perhaps for NSA encroachment or just to help Liberty out?
A real easy thing to do is just buy a VPN service. You can even buy.
I recommend ProXPN. Go to proxpn.com/FTL. Use the code FTL20 and you'll get 20% off for the life of the account.
Buy them with Bitcoins too?
Okay, no, you can't do that yet, but I'll talk to them about that.
There are a few you can actually pay with Bitcoins and stay completely anonymous. VPN basically creates a private network between your computer and a server that somebody owns, and basically anonymizes where your internet connection is coming from on the other end. So it could be a cheap way to protect you from torrents, like them finding you out. But it helps with privacy a little. Obviously, if you're logging into commercial websites and giving them your information, I mean, they're still going to know you and stuff like that. But it's usually less than $6 a month.
Yep.
And it's usually pretty close to the full speed of your normal internet connection. Of course, you could also just use something like Tor as an exit node for your websites, but it's slow and there might be some privacy issues. You don't know who's running the exit node. It could be the NSA, it could be a hacker. But yeah, I think that's real good advice. Get a VPN.
Yeah, I want to bring up real quick my recommendation as far as something that activists can do and that anybody can do. I do think Tor is a really wonderful technology. If you don't know, it's the onion router, and it's kind of an internet within the internet. And you have to use certain, browsers, certain software to be able to access it. One trick you can use, this is a flash drive. This is just a 4 gig flash drive. They can be bought for about $5. 4 gigabyte ones, you need at least that size. And you can put on an entire operating system called Tails. And this is actually run by the same people that produce Tor use this. And it will, my recommendation is to actually, if you really want to do certain things that you want to be kept quiet, is you actually create a completely separate identity on this. And that's how I use it, is when I use this, I'm not Brian Sovryn. I'm someone else, and I keep that mindset because, and that's one way to thwart things like social engineering. It's not perfect. Nothing, like we said, nothing is, but this is definitely something I recommend, that if there's a lot of activities you are concerned about people seeing, to do something like that. Because you can plug this into any computer and use it on any computer, and you can walk away. You can even do it at work. There's even it can mask itself to where it looks like it's Windows XP running. So there's a lot. It's a really, really great tool that I recommend people jump on because, again, it's the anonymity, and it can be done from anywhere. You don't even have to do it from home. You can go to the library and plug that thing in and go to town.
Like Brian said, if you're using something like Tor, Tor is for when you want to be anonymous, and and it's not even a good idea to have an alias. When you're doing something on Tor, it's basic. You really want to be nobody, completely anonymous, without even any identity. But one thing that came about in the Snowden documents is that the NSA is monitoring Tor exit nodes more closely than any other traffic. And I have a feeling that they're doing the same thing with commercial VPN services too.
But the more that they get adopted, the more they have to look at and the less ability they have.
I think some of the other technology, there's some things that people should also do is make sure that when you're accessing a website, make sure you're accessing it with a secure connection, HTTPS. There are some browser plugins like HTTPS Everywhere.
Right, which is run by the Electronic Frontier Foundation,
right.
Which is a great organization for privacy.
You can get that as a browser add-on, and it'll make sure that on any website that supports it, and even some that don't, it'll just try and establish an HTTPS connection. And then in terms of communication, if you really need to employ secure methods, one of the ways that you can be secure is what some of the these crazy elite hackers have used is what's called an air gap, which literally means that you communicate to a third party, and then that person takes the communication off the internet to another person, and then that's how the message is passed, so that there's an air gap in the communication.
Right.
So, again, it breaks the paper trail, breaks the internet trail, and if you really, really are in some kind of a crazy situation where you need to communicate privately, include an air gap in that method, where you're communicating with a third party. Again, I just still remember that everything. I think we remember that everything.
Yeah, have the rule that whatever you're saying online, whatever you're doing online, is probably going to get looked at.
I was going to just say real quick, one of the revelations, you mentioned it earlier, whether or not PGP had been cracked or not, it's actually part of one of the Snowden revelations, is that PGP is still secure, and the CIA is aggravated by that.
They're very annoyed. Yeah. There's another one that says something like Tor is annoying because they haven't really worked that out either. This is the end of the panel. We are at 2:30. Oh, sure. We'll go ahead and take a question, then I've got a closing comment.
Sure. One comment, I have used TrueCrypt for years, and I don't have any problem with it at all. I use a 26-character password for that passphrase. It's not
even
26,
or is it somewhere above 26 or close to 26?
Well, since I'm not using it anymore,
because you don't even want to tell them how many.
It was 26 until my disk crashed, and I'm not using that disk anymore. So
you've personal experience. TrueCrypt has been perfectly solid.
TrueCrypt has been great. Yeah. I do have a question. I've been here in Keene now for 4 days, or on my way in. I came in from Ohio and across Pennsylvania. I heard on NPR that I think it was the NSA got into the Google data center in Europe, and they walked into Google and showed them a diagram of how they had done it, and they could not put on the radio the expletives that this Google executive used. Can you update on that and tell us just what happened there?
I can quickly say I know that there was a Post-it note that was revealed by the NSA that essentially it showed Google's services, which is their own cloud, and then it showed the internet, and then it showed how those two come together at a front-end server that Google runs, and that went at the server, which is what connects the two services, and all the encryption happens at that server. So, all your information that's on Google's, in Google Drive or wherever, or in Google Plus, it's all encrypted there. So if you can beat the center, if you can beat that server, if you can crack that, you've got access to everything that's in here, that's in the Google's, in Google's universe. And on the Post-it note, they essentially wrote a smiley face and an arrow. The NSA wrote a smiley face and an arrow pointing at the server saying, we added, that the SSL has essentially been cracked. That being said, anything being encrypted by Google, the assumption is that it's not encrypted at all, and the NSA has full access to it. Did anyone have a comment quick on that?
I know, you can view videos on Google's our data centers are super secure, and we all our hard drives on our servers are encrypted. And if a hard drive crashes, first we crush the hard drive, and then we throw it into a shredder, and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, if the data that you have on a Google server is basically still under Google's control, and it's being secured from other people that aren't Google by nothing more than a simple password, which can be reset.
Johnson, did you have a quick comment?
Absolutely. There are a lot of people out there that attack Google, and while, again, I say that everything on the internet, you have to expect that it's public, I defend Google. And the reason why I defend Google is because at least they're trying. Of all these other companies out there like Facebook, Microsoft, Apple, they hand your data over willfully and enthusiastically. And Google fights it in court. They're taking it, they're taking the government to task on this stuff, and they've even started now. They've got the Google Transparency Report, where they're actually showing and documenting every government request for information, either about other governments or about communication or about personal requests, government subpoenas, and exactly how many of those requests have actually been filed. I actually brought a copy of the Google Transparency Report from this year if anybody wants to look at it, and being that I read a lot, I've read Inside the Plex, a book about Google. What would Google do? I've read both of these books just because I'm interested in technology. I read technology books, and just to hear the stories about Larry and Sergey and how they were raised in these Montessori schools outside of a government school system, they were raised to sort of be anti-authority in that way as much as possible. I know Eric Schmidt came in and kind of has become the government sort of liaison between Google, and there has been a lot of strife supposedly in the company over complying with government regulations, where Larry and Sergey have just sort of been like, what? Why do we have to do that?
Yeah,
and
Eric Schmidt has been noted for saying, look, if what you're doing, you want to keep it secret, maybe you shouldn't be doing it, which is a pretty... That's the wrong attitude.
Right. And I just one final note from me is that I brought it in. And I want to bring it up just very quickly. Is that I mentioned Kevin Mitnick. You said he's the ultimate hacker. He was held for 4.5 years in prison, federal prison, because they thought that he could dial NORAD and launch nukes by whistling.
And he never harmed anybody, by the way.
No.
I mean, he literally never harmed a thing. No,
he had spoofed cell phones.
Right, exactly.
And so they held him for 4.5 years without trial. And this guy is notorious, and he's talked to other hackers, and he talks all about social engineering. So I absolutely recommend. I mean, all of you are obviously interested in tech. Read The Art of Deception. It's a fantastic book about social engineering and how social engineering works, and it also reads a lot like a kind of like a spy thriller book almost. Even though they're true stories, they're extremely interesting. And then if you want a more technical book that actually talks about some of the technical nature of how a lot of these security systems have been broken, The Art of Intrusion. So The Art of Deception, The Art of Intrusion by this guy who was held for 4.5 years without trial.
And on top of that, he fairly recently published his autobiography called Ghost in the Wires, which is also an excellent read. He was prohibited from publishing his book for many years because apparently one of his terms of release or whatever was that he couldn't profit from his story for like 10 years or something like that. So he finally just got to release his book.
Right.
For 3 years, he couldn't touch a computer, actually, or a phone.
Yeah, exactly. So I recommend all those two. We gotta wrap up end this off here with the tech panel. So thank you all for being on. I just want to say real quick that there's a lot of people who are saying, look, they can control our computers now. They can do all this terrible stuff. Don't run away from technology. Just learn about it and use it. Mass adoption really, I think, is the key on setting all of this free. And in New Hampshire, it's happening. This is the place to kind of get together and everybody can work on things like the pirate, the Keen, what is it called? I'm sorry, the pirate box that you set up.
The pirate box is a mess right now.
Okay, well, right. But let's get more tech people here,
Yeah,
more
absolutely.
people interested in tech, so we can essentially build our own internet, things of that nature. I mean, there's just so much that can be done, especially when everybody gets together. So thank you so much again for everybody being on. Thank you for listening. You got to love it. It was a great panel. Really, really good time. And unfortunately, you know, you heard about the lasers. Sadly, I can't transpose the sight of those lasers, into the audio. But that was really cool, and I really appreciate those being brought on. So the nice thing about the tech panel was that it was very show and tell. Everybody brought something to look at. So when the video comes out, I'll make sure to mention it on Twitter. But, keep an eye out for that. Go to freekeen.com or the Keenevention page on Facebook. And because I think you really, there was a lot, the tech panel, I was very pleased. There was sight and sound. So, works very, very well as audio. And again, I hope you enjoyed it. But now I want to get to, there was a person asked a question at the end there. We only had time for one question in the Q&A. And they asked about, which is something we talked about in the last episode of Sovryn Tech, what's going on with Google. Essentially, the NSA hacked Google or cracked Google and Yahoo. And there's kind of been some talk, some Google employees, one in particular, Mike Hearn, who works out of Switzerland for Google, who I actually met in Santa Cruz, and the guy is just a class act, a really, really great guy. And, he literally just came out and said, fuck you, NSA, and, and GCHQ, which is the British version of it. And, Google says that, hey, anything that the NSA has done up till now, they're going to put a stop to. That's essentially the idea. I really still wish, I totally appreciate what Mike Hearn said, as well as some other Google employees. I really think Larry Page should have come out himself and said, we're going to go to China. Forget this. We will not be treated. We're human beings. We're running a business here. We will not be treated like this. So they didn't say that. So while I appreciate what some of these Google employees are doing, I gotta say that still I'm a little sketched out, and I'm not going back to using all of Google services just yet. I don't know. It's just maybe too little too late. I don't know, though. I think Mike Hearn is definitely, again, great guy, and he's putting out, a genuine heartfelt effort. And I would not want to belittle anything that he is doing, because just, again, a phenomenal human being. So anyway, that said, let's get into the Bitcoin panel. You got a nice bonus section here. I think you're really, really going to enjoy it. It was a very, very entertaining panel. A lot of great questions at the end. I'm going to answer one of the questions after the Bitcoin panel. I'll have a little bit of commentary, because there was an interesting article brought up during the Q&A session of the Bitcoin panel. So we'll talk about that. Enjoy. I'll be back with more after the panel.
So we are going to continue in the technological vein here with the Bitcoin panel. And there has been, if our panelists would go ahead and take the stage, go right ahead. We're going to get the ball rolling. Bitcoin's been definitely a buzzword throughout the convention. There's been a lot of talk about Bitcoin. Some people are brand new to Bitcoins. I know Russell Canning was set up earlier this weekend by Derek J. Derek J kind of showed him the ropes, and I'm sure Russell's not the only one who's been introduced to the use of Bitcoin this weekend. It's kind of taken the Liberty movement by storm within the last couple years. Porcupine Freedom Festival has become probably the most Bitcoin prolific event in the world. At least that's what I've been made to understand. The guy from Bitcoin Magazine was at the Porcupine Freedom Festival this year, and the Liberty community, there's a very regular meetup in Manchester that's been going on for over a year now, as I understand it. And as I said, we've got one happening in Keene as well. So the more technological wizards we can get here, the better off we're going to be. And Bitcoin, I think, is a key component. And that's why I thought it deserved its own panel here. And who better to host that than one of the hosts of Let's Talk Bitcoin. Stephanie Murphy is here, and she's also one of the hosts of Free Talk Live. She'll be on Free Talk Live tonight from 7 to 10 at night Eastern. And speaking of tech, you can tune it in on 102.3 here in Keene. If you're in North Keene, it's 102.5. And, of course, online anytime at lrn.fm and freetalklive.com. Stephanie is also a doctor, not of Bitcoin, not a Bitcoin doctor. But anyway, thanks for being here, Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Ian. I wish I was a Bitcoin doctor. That would be so cool. Can I get a PhD in Bitcoin? Anyway, thank you so much for coming to this panel. We're doing the Bitcoin panel now, and I am really excited about this because Bitcoin is one of my favorite things, right? It's that song, right? These are a few of my favorite things, encryption and free state.
Karaoke was last night.
Okay, so we're going to get started here. We've got some great panelists. I am Stephanie Murphy. As Ian mentioned, I am a podcast host, a talk show host. I host a show called Let's Talk Bitcoin, and you can find it at letstalkbitcoin.com, twice weekly show about all things cryptocurrency. I also host my own show, Pork Therapy, which is a pro-freedom kind of relationship talk show, and I'm a host of Free Talk Live, which you can hear me later tonight at freetalklive.com and on the radio here in Keene. And so I'd like to have all the panelists introduce themselves. Let's start out with George Mandrik.
Hi, guys. I'm Mandrik. I've been involved in Bitcoin for the past couple years. I run mandrik.com. It's a website where I sell my baklava online. And it's really just something I do for fun on the side. Right now, I'm mainly involved with blockchain.info. I'm the customer relations manager. So I handle pretty much anything technically related. People write in about any types of questions they have. I handle all the social media aspects and just whatever else. There's only about 4 of us right now involved with the company, and it's just kind of like, hey, what can you do today to help out? So it's pretty exciting. And if you're really into Bitcoin, it's awesome just being involved with a company like that. I spent 3 months with BitInstant as well doing support issues, and that was also a really cool experience. So I've only really been involved in the Bitcoin industry as far as working in the industry for about 6 months, but I guess that's a pretty long time for
But you've been accepting Bitcoin at your business for more than that, right?
For 2 years now, about 2 years.
That's longer than the CEOs of a lot of Bitcoin companies, so there you go. So, Matthew?
My name is Matthew Carano. My wife Barbara and I own a Brazilian cafe in Newmarket, New Hampshire, which is on the seacoast, town of about 9,000. And we as a restaurant accept Bitcoin. We started doing so a little over a year ago. I was actually first introduced to Bitcoin on a television program, and I don't even remember what the hell it was, but it showed people mining Bitcoin, and I became interested, but I didn't get it until at a Liberty meetup maybe 2 years ago now. I saw Eric Voorhees speak about it, got more interested, and we started accepting it. So that's me.
Great. And JJ?
Hello, I'm JJ, and I live in Manchester. I have a podcast as well, Neocash Radio. Basically, it talks about anything that isn't a fiat currency, and obviously Bitcoin falls into that category. I also manage the club in Manchester called The Quill, and we do have a lot of Bitcoin dealings there. And
shady.
It's good stuff. Also, there's a really strong community in Manchester with a lot of Bitcoin businesses, and I guess the pinnacle of which is the Lamasu Bitcoin Ventures, the guys making the Bitcoin ATM. I'm sorry, the Bitcoin machine. It's not an ATM. So I think I'm the least qualified here, but I'm really good with a microphone. So
You are totally qualified. Actually, I did ask some of the guys from Lamasu to be here today, but they were busy jet-setting around the world promoting their projects. So, but we definitely acknowledge them too. So, okay, I know that there are some people in the crowd today who don't really know that much about Bitcoin. Like, this might be one of the first times they're hearing about it, or they're just not that familiar with it. We're kind of old hat. We've been here for a couple years in New Hampshire, at least, knowing about Bitcoin and using it. But could you each just give like a few sentence explanation for somebody who really isn't familiar? What is Bitcoin and why should they care? Just a quick one. We won't spend too much time on this.
Well, Bitcoin is the free market solution to liberty and peace, I think. I think it's a way to circumvent the dollar, which is control over every transaction you make and it subverts the government. It allows you true freedom, limited anonymity, and it's putting the power of money back in your hands.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I would just say that it's a digital currency, pseudo-anonymous in that the transactions, it's easier to control from transaction point your anonymity, but the actual transactions, I don't know if I'm explaining this right, are open to the public to view. So you can see that money is taking place, is transacting, but you can't necessarily see who's on either side of that. So.
Yeah, I look at it as a way to store your wealth, transport your wealth, and spend your wealth outside of any government, not just the dollar, any government, anywhere in the world. There's places everywhere around this globe now that are accepting Bitcoin, and it's growing every day. So for me, it's just there's no other currency like that. I mean, it's just if you want to go to Europe on vacation, you want to get euros, you got to go through exchanges and things like that. With Bitcoin, you can get on a plane and you can go anywhere that that. I mean, you're gonna have to look, obviously, but that's changing. But it's a way to use this currency internationally, instant transactions. It's amazing.
Yeah, my favorite way personally to explain Bitcoin to someone who's not too familiar with it is imagine if you took some gold and you added like one of those teleporters from Star Trek where you can beam it up anywhere. And so now you have the ability to take a piece of gold and break it down into as many smaller pieces as you want, put the pieces back together, and send it anywhere in the world. And it's it's not costly at all to send it anywhere. So now suddenly you have a form of money that's easily divisible, that's easily transportable, and that holds its value. And I think those are the three characteristics that Plato said are what constitutes money. So there you go. A lot of Austrian economics people like to talk about gold and silver and precious metals as having those characteristics and therefore being good forms of money. But Bitcoin, I think, is an improvement on all of those. And as you mentioned, it's decentralized. There's no central authority that issues Bitcoin. It's part of a network of peer-to-peer connections among computers. They exist on the internet. It's very much a digital phenomenon. So, okay, you kind of answered this in your introduction, but like, how did you first get interested in Bitcoin? Like, tell me your Bitcoin virginity stories.
So for me, I first got involved. I heard about it on Free Talk Live, but it sounded kind of shady to me. This guy named Roger.
Sounded shady.
Yeah. This guy named Roger Ver reached out to me a couple years ago. He's pretty big in the Bitcoin world, and he reached out to me because he heard one of my advertisements on Wheels Off Liberty, the greatest liberty podcast ever. But he reached out to me. He heard an ad there, and he said, "Hey, you should start taking Bitcoin on your website, and if you do, I'll buy some baklava." So he convinced me basically to take it, and he sent me the 14 Bitcoins it cost for a pan of baklava at the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the current value of Bitcoin right now
is about $205 a piece.
$220 on Mt. Gox right now.
Well, we don't count.
So you're doing pretty good on the bit.
Yeah. So that was pretty. Yeah. Looking back, but for me, it was just initially a way. It made more sense. So the other way I was accepting payments was through PayPal, and PayPal has a lot of fees. They suck. So Bitcoin, I was like, wow, if I use BitPay, there's way less fees, and I could turn these into dollars and keep more of what I earn. So that's what it was initially. And then after a month or so, I was like, I could just keep these Bitcoins. They're actually pretty cool. But I learned more about it as I started accepting it. And that's why I see a lot of value in promoting it to brick and mortar stores, simply by saying there's less fee. You could turn this into dollars, and there's going to be less fees than when taking credit cards, because there's 3.99% for some of these and up, depending on what kind of credit card you're taking. I think Amex is 6% or so. It's something crazy. But with Bitcoin, you use something like Coinbase or BitPay. They're very, very small to no fees, depending on your business. And
actually, there was a recent transaction where somebody moved at the time about $6 million worth of Bitcoins. And on that transaction, they paid something like 0.001 Bitcoins, which is about 6 cents.
Right.
So where else could you move $6 million?
I think that was just a general Bitcoin transaction, right?
Yes.
But even if you use like a transaction company, third party, to handle your transactions like BitPay or Coinbase, the fee you pay them for that service is still way less than you're paying these credit card companies. So you could get small businesses on board just from that and then they could learn more about Bitcoin from there. You know, if they can decide eventually, like, oh, this is kind of cool, I think I'll hold on to these rather than selling them for dollars like I am now.
Yeah, Matthew, how did you get interested, first of all, in Bitcoin?
Well, it really spoke to me from a philosophical standpoint. I mean, there are a lot of technical reasons why, or, you know, as a business person, business reasons why you would accept it, including, I don't know that you mentioned this, Mandrik, but there are no chargebacks either. You can't, once the transaction's gone through, no one can take it from you unless you willingly give it back to them. So from a business perspective, it's exciting in that way. But from a philosophical standpoint, as a libertarian, you know, I know what the government does to the value of currency, of the dollar, and I know that, you know, the paper dollar is just this made up piece of crap at this point, and Bitcoin's not. It's not. You can't inflate it. It's not a central authority. You know, so for freedom reasons, we chose to accept it.
Would you say you were interested in Austrian economics before finding out about Bitcoin?
That's just not my that's not my background. But, you know, as I learn more and more about that, then it makes connection points. Yes.
Gotcha. How about you, JJ? How did you find out about Bitcoins and get interested in them?
Well, I think when I found out about them being in the Liberty scene in Keene before I actually started using them. I think what it was is when I was managing the KAC 2 years ago, roughly. And so what happened is Free Talk Live had a lot of those Cassatius coins. And so those started to circulate amongst the community. And
Cassatius coins are physical representations of Bitcoins where it's like a beautiful little token that has a Bitcoin private key on it. So you have the claim to some Bitcoin on a physical piece, just for people who aren't familiar.
Yeah, thank you. But we were also using silver a lot, too. So, you know, at the time, we were interested in just using any alternative to the dollar, the ferns, as some people refer to them. And so Bitcoin was natural. Yes, it's not a dollar. Well, let's learn about it a little bit. And all of a sudden, it's like, yeah, I'll trade in that, too. I'll sell you tacos or whatever for some Bitcoin. And at first, it was just like Mandrik's baklava, where it was.
I remember selling gyros at the CAC for getting a Cassatius coin for one.
Yeah, exactly.
$5 sandwich.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it was a great experiment, and of course, being on Free Talk Live at the time as well, we talked about it a lot. So that was kind of the beginning for me.
Right. So I'm hearing a lot of reasons that people who are interested in liberty might also be interested in Bitcoin because it allows you for some a greater degree of freedom in your business dealings, more control over, who's sort of influencing when you get paid and when you pay someone else. You're not sort of having this man in the middle with PayPal or credit card companies that you're dealing with. You're doing a transaction on a voluntary basis with another individual, right? And that's kind of what we all like.
I coined a term the other day. It reduces.
Really, you coined a term?
I did. It reduces your force footprint, right? So, like when you drive on the roads, you're kind of like, oh, I'm not saying you're supporting the government system, but you're using something that was created by the government, right? Like through their systems or whatever they have in place. So you're just pretty much circumventing everything, all their currency. Like you're not using their dollar, you're using Bitcoin. Okay, so maybe the internet network you're on, whatever they pay taxes or whatever. But it's just a way to reduce that, and from a liberties perspective. I mean, there's plenty of other reasons financially to use Bitcoin.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of those because we, I guess, as people who are interested in liberty, a lot of people who are in the liberty world are also interested in job freedom, financial freedom, maybe self-employment, maybe starting their own businesses, entrepreneurship. And you all are entrepreneurs. You know, you all have your own businesses. And so how do you use Bitcoin in your business life? And how do you think that makes you more free if you do?
Well, at the club, we accept Bitcoin for membership. We accept Bitcoin for rent. In fact, Matt and Billy Rock, one of the tenants, or former tenants at the Quills lodging area, she wrote a blog post about this and actually got a lot of people excited about the prospects of paying rent in Bitcoin. But we also, we do as much as we can with Bitcoin. And personally, business-wise, obviously, with the podcast, Neocash Radio, we don't accept dollars for anything. If there's any sort of expenditures, we try to use Bitcoin as much as possible. There are exceptions. There are, like SoundCloud, for example, they want dollars, And some of these bigger sites, it's more difficult to try to negotiate with them and get them to accept Bitcoin. So you often end up looking for alternative vendors or vendors who aren't so well known or well established, because they're willing to try a different currency and they're willing to use this new currency. So it's a great way of finding out what else is in the marketplace from a business perspective, because you're resourcing vendors that you wouldn't normally look at because they're using a currency that you find more attractive and more efficient. And so then you can start building better relationships, because what ends up happening is these vendors typically don't have a lot of customers or clients for the most part. Like comparing, the big box versus the mom and pop. And so you end up getting better service. You end up getting a more personal connection. And next thing you know, they're your friend. So I think Bitcoin in the business realm has also sort of benefited my personal life, in that I've made friends with some people who use it simply because they use it, and then naturally spreading talking about liberty from there.
So bringing trade to a more personal level.
Exactly.
It's funny how it's a digital currency, but yet I feel, most of the transactions that we do in Bitcoin, I know them. And it's funny, I had a great experience with Mandrik a few days ago where we use blockchain to accept Bitcoin at the restaurant. But I don't remember all the details.
He had some type of issue, and he wrote blockchain, and I responded.
And Mandrik responds, and we'd never met in person, although I've known about him and saw him at PorkFest and stuff. But I was like, oh, hey, thanks for responding.
He didn't know
I'm going to be on a panel with you.
You didn't know that I was going to be responding.
Yeah, that's really cool. But anyway,
there's a small incestuous world.
It is, but that's kind of a cool thing. How it's a digital currency, but yet it's more prominent it's pretty prominent in New Hampshire. So the people that you're dealing with who are using Bitcoin, a lot of times you know them. And I think with the whole chargeback aspect of it too, you have to build trust. Like with dollars can just kind of happen, but with Bitcoin, you have to build trust with your clientele. Like if you're going to accept, you got to believe that or they have to believe you that you're going to give them this product, and if they give you your Bitcoin for it, you can't take it back from them. So they got to trust you. It creates more of a trust in the transaction, I think. So.
I'd like to share a quick experience I had at the Porcupine Freedom Festival this summer. I was purchasing a Italian soda at what was it called? The Revolution Coffee stand. They had a tent set up where the Lamassu machine was there, and I, was buying a cup of soda. It was $2, so at the time it was 0.02 Bitcoins. Well, I made a mistake and I sent them 0.2 Bitcoins. So I was paying $20 for a cup of soda. But since I knew them, I said, oh, hey, I screwed up. Could you send me back? And yeah, no problem. They sent me 0.18 back to my phone. And it was that easy. So yeah, there is an element of trust involved, but just knowing that you're using this kind of cool, like niche kind of alternative currency, perhaps you share some ideology with the person, so
Definitely.
It creates an instant bond. So I have a couple of questions about your restaurant in particular, Matthew. So like what percentage of your business would you say is in Bitcoin?
It's very small. I think, on the Seacoast there are a lot of libertarians, but I would say that my experiences at Manchester is kind of a hub for Bitcoin. I think if we were located in Manchester, we would probably do a lot more physical business. So I would say, I could probably maybe total transactions since we started accepting is maybe 50.
Okay. So have you ever had anyone come in simply because they knew that you accepted Bitcoins at your business?
Yes, but they've also been a part of the Liberty Movement, or Free Staters at least, yeah.
Okay, so nobody that you didn't know yet, but maybe
people that I didn't know, but were
peripherally related.
Yeah.
Okay. And Mandrik, so I'm curious about your Bitcoin business too, about not only what you do with Mandrik.com with your baklava,
right,
but also what you do with blockchain.info, because right now, and you have said this publicly, you're making most of your income in Bitcoins.
Yeah, about 95. At this point, it's probably over 95, definitely over 95% of my income is in Bitcoin. So it's kind of this unique perspective, like this view I have, because most people right now that I talk to, they're collecting Bitcoins as a way to invest. They want it to succeed. Like they want to be able to one day use Bitcoin for everything. But when that day comes, a lot of them are like, I want them to be worth $10,000 each. For me, that'd be cool if that happens. Don't get me wrong. I'd love to have my own little floating island in space or whatever.
But you got to buy groceries.
Yeah,
in the meantime, right.
I'd be perfectly happy just being able to use Bitcoins that were worth $200 each or something in a world that they're accepted everywhere. That's ideal for me. That's the solution. So
I mean, as Bitcoin history has progressed, I guess, has anything changed about how much you save versus how much you spend? I mean, are you...
Well, I'm a pretty frugal guy as it is. So whether I'm saving FRNs, in the past or now with Bitcoin, I'm still doing that. I still live well below my means. But
do you kind of say, "Oh crap," every time you have to spend some? Or
no, I don't at all. I don't. I've learned to not freak out when the price drops due to certain situations. Look, with Bitcoin, if you see it as the future of money, you're not gonna freak out when something like Silk Road bust happens and the price drops drastically for a day or so. You can use that as a selling opportunity. Maybe sell some and then buy some when it dips low. If you want to play that game, you can play that game. But I'm in it for the long haul. I see it for what it is. I see the potential behind it, and I know it's growing. I would be amazed if it was just worth nothing tomorrow. I don't see that. It's just being widely accepted everywhere. Even some governments are coming on board with it. I see the U.S. being left behind because the U.S. is probably they come down pretty hard on U.S.-based exchanges or businesses. It's very difficult to do a large business exchange in the U.S. But other countries are like, yeah, whatever, just do your thing. Canada's pretty Bitcoin friendly. Germany, there's a lot of other countries.
Even China.
Even the Chinese government's just kind of like, okay. I mean, for Bitcoin to have grown as much as it has in China the past few months, that the government has to know what's going on, and they're just kind of waiting. A lot of governments are just taking a wait-and-see approach. So
a technical, I guess, sort of question. For those who have businesses where some of your business is in Bitcoin, how do you manage the accounting? Or is it kind of so small that you're not really too worried about that yet?
Matt and I probably have a different approach. See, I don't pay taxes, and I'm public about it, and I don't say I'm an activist because of that. It's just smart. Like, why would you pay if you look at normal people who get busted for tax evasion or whatever, the process is usually you either end up paying pennies on the dollar, settling, or you can leave the country before going to jail kind of situation. But there's a whole bunch that happens between then. So I'm just kind of like, well, if I one day have to settle for pennies on the dollar for some money, drag it through some court for some time, I'd rather do that than just be paying all this money up front. But obviously when you own a brick and mortar, different story. You deal with a lot more crap with inspectors and everything. So for you, I'm interested too. I'm wondering how that is.
We avoid meals and rentals with Bitcoin.
Okay. So, I guess you've talked a little bit about how everybody uses Bitcoin for their business, but how do you use it maybe in more personal interactions? Like, do you go to Bitcoin meetups? Do you use it to form a social circle? Do you buy things and sell things with your friends with Bitcoin? And how does sort of being around a lot of other people who also use Bitcoin impact that?
Well, one other thing that to answer that last question, the club basically, because we do deal in ferns, silver, Bitcoin, and gold, so Ofer is actually writing software to handle all of that. So the software is gonna take in how much silver, and it's gonna keep track of that stuff. So when you start using alternative currencies and you actually want to do accounting, you're kind of starting off at a blank sheet of paper in a way. And so having a software engineer to write this stuff for you is very helpful. But at the club, there's a lot of Bitcoin transactions that go on, whether it's for little food items, drinks. There's all kinds of ways that people want to spend it, and people are always looking forward to spending it. I think what I hear most consistently is, do you accept Bitcoin? And that's like the second thing people ask. Do you have product X that I desire? Will you use currency that I desire to use? And that's pretty much the order. And so I think, going to the meetups is great. It's in Manchester, the meetups are just outstanding. And I think...
Can you talk a little bit about Bitcoin meetups in New Hampshire? What is the social scene like for Bitcoin? Like, what is going on here?
Yeah. I mean,
nerds.
Not just Manchester, but I mean all over the state. Bitcoin is not only bringing people together, but it's connecting people from outside the movement as well, outside the circles that we normally sort of swim in. Because, for example, local Bitcoin meeting up with someone at the meetup.
I sold some Bitcoins to some guy through localbitcoins.com, and he was in Manchester, and I was heading out to the meetup at Strange Brew, and I was like, hey, just come on out and meet us up there. Guy comes out. He loved it. He had a great time. He just messaged me yesterday. He's like, hey, when's the next one? I want to come out again. He's not a free stater at all.
Right.
And a really cool guy. We had a really nice conversation.
But it's a great conversation starter, and I think that's you're getting your foot in the door with the social aspect of, you go to a bar and let's say you ask the waitress if they accept Bitcoin, and then you have a little conversation about it, and that sort of stuff is really wonderful because it's a very low key liberty topic to get into.
Yeah, and just for those who are going to be hearing this on maybe a podcast, because we have a live audience here in this room, which is great, but this may go onto the internet too. So there is a pretty active Bitcoin social scene in New Hampshire, but not just in New Hampshire, like more in the Northeast in general is what I'm familiar with. We've got local Bitcoin meetups at least once a week here in New Hampshire and Manchester. Also in different parts, like in Boston, there's a fairly active Bitcoin scene. There's some restaurants in Boston that accept Bitcoin. There's some restaurants in New Hampshire that accept Bitcoin. And then, of course, the Free State Project is here, and we've got the Porcupine Freedom Festival in the summer, the Liberty Forum in the winter, and those are huge Bitcoin events as well. I mean, Bitcoin almost dominates those, just like at Money 2020, apparently it was really big. They're not specifically Bitcoin events, but a lot of people there are interested and excited about learning about Bitcoin, so they kind of become Bitcoin events by default. So if you're liberty curious at all, if you're interested in Bitcoin and you're like, oh, what's this liberty thing? Maybe one of those events might be something to consider coming out to sometime.
Yeah, the Manchester meetups every Sunday, right?
They've been changing it. Sometimes they do Saturday and sometimes Sunday because different people can come out on Saturday. So there's sort of
it's on a rotating schedule now.
Yeah, and there's sort of, obviously Facebook is a great resource, but there's a Facebook group that talks about this, and so it's sort of decided by committee or whatever.
Right. Now, on the other hand, I just mentioned all this stuff that's going on locally to do with Bitcoins in New Hampshire, but I'm going to play, a little devil's advocate here for a minute. Bitcoin is a truly global thing. I mean, a currency that you can send anywhere in the world, and a payment system, really, that you can send anywhere in the world and you can use to get more freedom in your life, no matter where you are. So the next question I want to ask is kind of a tough question. And that is, does Bitcoin obsolete the Free State Project? If you can use it to be free anywhere in the world, does it obsolete the Free State Project?
Someone talked to me about this, I think yesterday or the day before, and they said, Bitcoin replaced the Free State Project. And I went one bigger, and I said, no. My thing that I've been pushing is Bitcoin is the Ron Paul. Bitcoin replaces the person that spreads the message of liberty, being not a person, right? Not flawed by humanity, So Bitcoin is one of the key talking points of liberty as far as I'm concerned. Does it replace it? No, because it's not getting people to move here. So that's a different subject.
Well, that's JJ's being technical. Okay. No, I see. I agree. Hey, I think the FSP is great. I moved here as part of the FSP. There's a lot of cool things. If you want to move or be around more like-minded people, if you want to get involved in certain types of activism, it's a great organization. If you're like me, I moved here because it's like, hey, I'm a business dude. I'm an agorist. I'm not really an activist. I'm not interested in going to jail. Or I'm not saying if you're an activist, that means you're interested in going to jail. But I'm just saying, I want to avoid the state as much as possible. My main focus is financial freedom, and Bitcoin is financial freedom. It really is, and it's allowed me to. I want to make my income in Bitcoin, and I am there now, and that's really cool. It's what I want to be doing. I don't really. It's really cool being around other like-minded people. I've been going to the meetups, the Bitcoin meetups lately. I've been trying to go out to Manch every weekend, and I go to the Keene one. It's a lot of fun. I love talking Bitcoin. There's a lot of cool people up here. But I kind of look at it like I don't need to be living in New Hampshire anymore. Like I don't need this necessarily. Like it's not why I moved. Like I said, I liked working with other Liberty people because we could do financial transactions with each other outside of the government. But now I can do that with Bitcoin with anyone in the world, and it's amazing. It's mind blowing. So I don't know. It's cool to have a home base, but for me, I could see myself traveling more in the future and using Bitcoin in other countries. Because like I said, U.S. I don't know. I think it's going to fall behind as far as Bitcoin use. It's going to be tougher. in some ways. Obviously, I don't think they can really shut it down. The government they'll try to do some type of control, but I don't think it'll be very successful. But it's still going to make it difficult for things like exchanges. But other countries are going to fly way ahead, and I'd love to check it out, check out the scenes there. But
and if you're someone who's interested in crossing international borders, try taking cash over a border. You'll be detained.
Take your gold fortune across
over the U.S. border either way. With Bitcoin, you can have a brain wallet, and you can remember 8 words, and you can have your Bitcoins anywhere in the world without taking anything physical. So,
and as it grows, you'll be able to use it in other places more than just. I mean, right now I buy gift cards. A couple places that take Bitcoins for gift cards, and that's kind of cool. Being able to, oh look, I bought this gift card for Walmart, and now I can get gas at Sam's Club, and I did it with Bitcoin. That's pretty neat. But ideally, I would rather just go to a gas station and pay it with Bitcoin. But a year ago you couldn't even do that. So this time next year, I don't know. I mean, it's going to be pretty huge, I think.
I don't know if anybody else owns a business here, but it's extremely easy to accept Bitcoin, and the more people that do, the better. So I hope we might be the only restaurant in New Hampshire that accepts. Does anybody know of any other?
No, there's that Vertical Dreams.
Is the climbing gym?
Climbing gym.
So very important if you own a restaurant.
So how would, if somebody's listening to this maybe on a podcast or in the audience, how would they go about doing that if they have a business and they want to start accepting Bitcoins, but they're not sure where to begin?
Set up a wallet, blockchain.info, and set up a wallet. It's very easy.
Thanks for the plug.
Yeah, no, you got it.
And then when somebody wants to pay with Bitcoin, you basically just show them a QR code of your Bitcoin address.
Yeah, so in the right near our we don't have a physical register, but right near our register, we've got our QR code posted. When someone comes in and they say, okay, we want to order this, we have a little app that converts Bitcoin to dollars to Bitcoin. We say, okay, so there's a $10 worth of merchandise. Plug 10 in, it shows us how much Bitcoin that you would owe. Flip it around so they can see. They put that denomination of Bitcoin in. Scan our QR code, and in a few seconds we see that the transaction has gone.
Yeah, and there's also point of sale systems that integrate Bitcoin. There's one that was just announced a week ago, and I can't.
Soft touch.
But then you have to share that with the state. So
right, BitPay also has an integrated POS system that works on a tablet, and there's more to come. Like the transaction, we handled about 185 Bitcoin transactions at PorkFest this year. It's still kind of a little slow. As far as it's kind of clunky, like people just getting their phones out and scanning this code and doing this thing. It's not like where credit cards are, but it's going to get there. It's going to be easier. It's just going to take some time.
Did you use an integrated POS, or you just use the QR?
We had a POS system for other orders to take the orders, print out receipts and stuff, but we just had a QR code. I actually just had we had a dual monitor set up, and on the second monitor facing the customers, it just had the QR code with the blockchain wallet, so they could see an unconfirmed transaction when it went through.
Along with a snarky message.
Yeah, at times, yeah.
All right, so at this point, I think we're going to open it up to some questions from the audience. It looks like some people have questions here. So go ahead.
So my question is related to Bitcoin security. I really like the idea of Bitcoins, and I'd like to have some in the future. But say hypothetically, someone like the NSA or the CIA or some really or some independent super hacker decides to hack into the entire Bitcoin network and destroy all the Bitcoins in the world. Is there any risk for that? Is there any risk of any government coming down onto Bitcoin and just wiping out the entire network?
Rephrase that question and replace Bitcoin with internet. That's kind of where it's at right now. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm
just saying, think of the possibility of that. Like, could somebody come in and just like destroy the whole internet kind of thing? And I guess there's some like I don't know, like some insane scenario where there's these worldwide EMP blasts that destroys all electronic kind of. I think if something like that were to happen, the way it would happen, we'd have a lot of other things to worry about. Like,
right now the network is hashing at what is this, 4,156 terahashes. So someone would have to put out
That's the amount of computing power in the Bitcoin network.
Yeah, the network is hashing this to solve the next block at this power rate per second. So someone would have to create the next block a false block in which they steal Bitcoins, and even then they can only have a limited number of transactions in that block, but they would have to put out over 2,000 terahashes of power, and right now that is near impossible with the supercomputers and their limited capacities. You'd pretty much have to hijack the network, like all the individual computers.
Right, it doesn't exist on a server. It exists on everybody, on millions
just like
of
the internet.
computers. Right.
Right. And then with what JJ's saying, this scenario, and then you would have to be able to react to the market's response to that. And as we've seen in the past, when something happens with Bitcoin, like when we had that fork back in March or whatever, I think it was, or was it May? I think
it was May.
You meant May? The reaction, like if you think the issue was resolved so fast because all these people have a interest in making sure it works. Whereas with something happens with the government, the people getting paid to fix it, they don't really care. And
and they went back.
Committees
they went back to a different block.
Right.
So they realized that this block is bad, and the community, everybody as individual users, decided that, okay, we're going to go back to this block and restart and fix this flaw that caused this error. But at the same time, even if you have all that hashing power, you still have to win that block reward. You still have to be the one that gets that correct answer. And even with 51% of the power, you still have a 49% chance of not getting it.
So just for people who aren't really familiar with some of these terms, what we're talking about is the theoretical risk of something called a 51% attack, where some entity like the government or some other, maybe a group of hackers or a botnet or something, gets 51% of the network power on the Bitcoin network and then uses it to create a record that says, no, actually, we own all the Bitcoins. And that is incredibly unlikely. I saw that there was an infographic just a couple months ago that came out that said, in order for someone to do that, it basically takes like way more than the military budget of most countries in the world. So it's very unlikely.
Okay, and I've one more follow-up question. What solutions are there for me as an individual to secure my Bitcoin wallet?
Great question.
I think security is the number one thing. Security is the number one thing. I mean, it's still kind of the Wild West out there, and I've helped people recover funds from a wallet maybe where they kind of lost certain information, but they still had the password, and I was able to help, and that's awesome. Like, that's great. Be able to get people reconnected with their money that they thought they lost. But I also see issues where people have their money stolen because they use very limited they use small passwords. They use just easily hackable wallets in some ways. So really, it's all about it depends on what type of wallet you're using. I promote blockchain.info, but I'm not like this guy that's like, no, that's all you should use. You should always keep an open mind. You should study all the different types of ways to store Bitcoins. And don't use anything you don't feel comfortable with. If you use something like blockchain.info, have two-factor authentication enabled. You can get Google Authenticator on a smartphone or a tablet. They have YubiKeys. I have one in my pocket out somewhere. They have these little USB keys that your computer recognizes as a keyboard, and there's lots of different ways to have security. Hardware wallets are on their way next year. They're going to be pretty interesting to see.
A hardware wallet is like a device that you can store the Bitcoins on. That's not a computer that can get viruses and malware and stuff, right?
Right. And the way the backups are done is that you could actually restore a backup through the online server. It's kind of some technical stuff in there, but there's a lot of things coming out that you'll be able to secure your wallet better. But I would encourage people to really look into security. Like, as long as you have security set up properly on a wallet, whatever you use, you can kind of figure out, like, that's the first thing you should really learn about, in my opinion.
So encrypt a wallet, strong passwords, don't use the same password for everything on the internet.
Two-factor authentication for online wallets, for sure. For anything that has two-factor authentication.
Hardware wallets, perhaps. So those are all some ideas. Anybody else have thoughts?
Well, the only other thing is to have more than one wallet. I mean, if you're dealing with a lot of Bitcoins, you're going to want to consider that the device you have your Bitcoins on is just as the wallet you have in your pocket. So if that wallet gets stolen and someone is able to get into that device and get through your password, if it's encrypted, they can gain access to that. At the same time, you don't put all your money in your wallet when you go walking around town. You keep some of your money in whatever security situation you have, whether it's your bank or it's your mattress or your lockbox at home. And so you follow that same thing with Bitcoin. You be smart about it, and you keep your mind on your money, and you make
your money on your mind.
and your Bitcoin on your mind, I guess. Let's say it that way. But you make the smart decisions. It's all about personal responsibility. I mean, Bitcoin removes the nanny state from your life as far as money is concerned, and that means that you are responsible, and if you screw up, you will lose.
Yeah, that's scary as hell.
Yeah.
when you're responsible for everything like that, that's
so that it's just there's a lot out there. There's a lot of information. There's paper wallets. There's wallets that you can have a computer that's not even connected to the internet. Put inside a vault inside of your house. I mean, there's ridiculous layers you can put into it. It all depends upon how much risk you're actually leveraging.
All right, let's have our next question from the audience.
Do any of you think that crowdfunding can be used by the Bitcoin community to produce a 30-second television commercial with Bitcoin 101 compressed into those 30 seconds, perhaps with a plot of Bitcoin price since 2009 on a logarithmic scale, and have entities like blockchain and Bitcoin bombs and so forth contribute to that, and whereby the motivation will be partly selfish greed with the possibility of your investment skyrocketing, and also the altruism of eroding the state?
I would make a public pledge to voice over it at no charge, to narrate it.
Oh, of course. You have a good voice.
Thank you. So anybody crowdfunding?
I mean, this just seems very U.S.-centric type stuff going on, and I think the United States is actually one of the crappiest places for Bitcoin at the moment. In fact, China puts out 26-minute documentaries on Bitcoin on state television, and the Chinese Bitcoin market is just skyrocketing now, where if you want to arbitrage your dollars to Bitcoin to yuan, yeah, you're going to actually make money. And you can do that all day long and just make money because they're paying more for Bitcoin in China. They're also paying more for Bitcoin in Brazil. In fact, Bitcoin is a lot more successful outside the United States than here because the dollar to Bitcoin pinch point, where the federal government is getting their panties in a bundle over the loss of power as their grasp on the people in this area slips through their fingers like so many Bitcoins.
If I could interject, I would argue that if we raise the 4 million or so FRNs to do, say, the Super Bowl, and Joe Sixpack knows what Bitcoin is in this country, then Joe Sixpack in other countries will likely know it too. It's
not a soft drink. It's not. It's. There's more to Bitcoin than just a 30-second ad on television. And while I like this, dude, it's a great idea. I just don't think it's worth that money.
But I'm saying Joe Sixpack is motivated
I don't think
by
it's
greed.
worth the money.
Regardless.
I don't.
Maybe you could start it. Maybe
I don't
you
think
could do a
it's
Bitcoin
worth.
starter.
The answer is no.
Joe Sixpack, I think right now, if he were to look at Bitcoin, he would be like, I don't know what the hell this is. Even after the 30-second ad, and he goes to look further into it. Like Bitcoin's like where email was when your grandma was like, like it's not at that point yet where.
Put it on a NASCAR.
Yeah, there you go. That's my answer. Put it on NASCAR.
Well, it took me a few times, right? Did it take you a few times to kind of let it sink in?
I just started accepting it because I was like, oh, less fees than PayPal, cool. And then the months as I learned more about it, I was just like, oh, okay, this actually is better than, I actually like this more now than getting paid in dollars and silver and whatever.
What it took for me was having someone I already knew who personally gave me an introduction to it. So I don't know. I'm not sure if that's the answer, but you could try it. There's Bitcoin Starter. There's some other websites.
Who still watches? I'm just wondering who still watches commercials. I mean, the Tech Panel, torrents. Come on.
I would argue that the what would really hook people would be the logarithmic scale, where they would see 2009. It's well under 1 cent, and the over 10,000-fold, 20,000-fold increase.
Right, but the problem with that I see is that then people get on board because they're like, oh, get rich quick scheme. Like a lot of people say that that's what Bitcoin is, and a lot of people lost a lot of money back in April when Bitcoin went down because they were just getting on board because they're like, oh, it's going to double in price in a couple months. I'm gonna make all this money, but I don't look at Bitcoin as this get rich quick scheme. Like I said, it could stabilize at 200 for the next 10 years. Of course, that's not possible for it to be successful. That it's not going to happen. But I'm just saying, like, Bitcoin isn't about just getting rich, getting in now so you can get rich. It's going to be a bumpy ride. If you're going to get on board, you better just hold on because there's a lot of craziness.
And people who get on board for that reason, once they get burned, they're going to hate it. And we don't want that at all. We want them to understand the fundamentals first, or at least from my perspective, I want them to understand why.
Yeah, if you
start using it.
If you want to make a lot of money off of Bitcoin in a few years, buying now, don't just ignore Bitcoin then. Just buy Bitcoin and don't even look at the price.
Lots of really interesting ideas about mainstream adoption of Bitcoin. I do want to get 3 more questions in from the audience. So we got 3 more. Go ahead.
Okay. My question is more or less how would I get started? I'm a person who doesn't have a smartphone, doesn't have a laptop, doesn't really own a computer, and doesn't have. I have access to the internet, but it's not through my own means. So what are the terms of use, like the unofficial ones? Like, what do I need to actually do it? And is there like a device or like a debit card type thing or something which I could have to just store them and then use them?
Well, that's what I was wondering. What do you want Bitcoin for? Do you want to just hold on to them, or are you looking to use it to spend? Or
yes and yes. I mean, just to hold on to as if I was pretending it was gold, because it is sort of. Or to have so that if I have an opportunity to spend it at, say, one of your businesses, because I want to go to a restaurant or whatever, then I could.
Well, you can actually print out a paper wallet. And I think that would be actually, if you have no electronic devices but you have access to the internet, you can actually create a wallet where it's a piece of paper. There's a QR code on the left with your public key that you'd give out to people, if to receive payments, and then it would also have your private key with the QR code. So if you want to send funds, you have one there. Is that what?
Thank you.
Yeah.
We've got a real paper wallet in the audience.
And then, so if there's certain apps where if you want to send from a paper wallet, like the Android app for blockchain.info, you can scan the private key anytime you go to send, but you wouldn't have to actually have that on inside the wallet itself.
If you don't have a
There's some technical
smartphone,
terms,
but you have a dumb phone or a regular cell phone, there are also ways to send Bitcoin by SMS.
That's
so
right.
there's Coinapult, and the company that does M-Pesa. It's not really in the U.S., but they're also developing ways to send Bitcoin by SMS as well.
Do I need anything more advanced than a track phone? Is that a
for
yes?
that?
No.
I don't think so.
If it can do SMS, you can do that.
Yeah. And you could still go to blockchain.info, set up your wallet online, have the backup sent to your email address if you wish, and then you can just, anytime you get to the internet from wherever you are, you can access that wallet, and pretty much you'll have a wallet that's basically on the internet.
Oh, another thing you could do is the cassatious physical Bitcoins that we mentioned before, which is a physical token with basically a claim to Bitcoin on it. So that you don't have to be connected.
They're
to
sold
the
at a
internet
premium,
at
but
all.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
That's
it's a
true.
little more expensive, but you can get them.
But like for someone like my mom's interested in Bitcoin, just like because she sees how excited I am about it. She's like, I just want to get some, give you some money here and there to buy some, just money that I don't mind losing, that I can live without if Bitcoin goes to nothing. And for her, I just made a paper wallet and I just send the funds there, and I gave her that piece of paper to her and told her to secure it because it's basically like holding cash. So for someone who doesn't want to spend it and doesn't really want to understand, it's because it can be pretty complicated still.
Yeah.
But that's a good way for.
Great question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next question.
There's been an argument. I'm kind of like to get your perspective on this. The argument's been that as soon as we get quantum computers coming out there, they're going to break the cryptography and all the bitcoins are going to go to zero. But I read something last week that I found a bit interesting. With every Bitcoin address, there's a private key which you keep. There's a public key which is used when you spend the Bitcoins and only when you spend the Bitcoins. And your Bitcoin address is actually a hash of your public key. So as long as you use wallets which use change addresses, your public key never goes on the blockchain until you spend the Bitcoin. And therefore, because the only thing on the blockchain with your address is your Bitcoin address, and it's a hash of your public key, the story goes that quantum computers can't break that hash. So it would be immune to quantum computing. And I'm wondering if you've heard anything about this, because I just heard about it a couple of days ago.
I know I read that same article.
I read that same article, yeah.
It was probably posted in that Free State group, I think.
The only thing I've read relating to this that's different is an article about where quantum computers are right now and how efficient they've become. And I think the latest one that I saw was something like it's not capable, it's not fast enough yet. But I think they're capable within the next year of doing the 256, breaking 256. I think Shaw, and but by then there could be 512, right? That's the beauty of Bitcoin, is that the software is upgradable, the wallets are upgradable. The software can always be changed and made better, and it's never made better by fiat. It's always made better by individuals deciding, I'm going to change the software on my miner or my hard drive or my device. And so I think Kevin Freehart has this quote that I use all the time, and he says, hackers write code faster than legislators write law. And I think that's true in so many ways for Bitcoin, and more than just legislators. Obviously the NSA that gets funded by those legislators. But I think the community is very much aware of what's going on, and their self-interest at holding on to the wealth that they've gathered and the strength they have in that currency is going to drive better and better
The
software.
market response to things like that is just incredible with Bitcoin.
Couldn't quantum computing be used to secure the Bitcoin network just as it could be used to potentially attack it?
It's a good thought.
Well, I mean, it's sort of like the issue is that the quantum computers are very difficult because you have to cool the processor down, right? You have to basically bathe it in liquid hydrogen, or liquid hydrogen, or nitrogen, yeah. And it's expensive, so that's why pretty much only huge corporations or governments are capable of building quantum computers. So there's sort of a barrier to entry with that.
And final question.
Questions. Two.
Questions.
And the first one is, you've both referred to Bitcoins as currency and money, and there is a difference between the two. Was referring to it as money a misstatement?
I don't refer to it as money, but I'm on the fence either way.
I've never really thought about that.
I call it personally a digital currency.
I typically use the word currency, but in conversation, money might slip out just as I'm just used to referring to something I exchange for a product as money.
Okay.
But
it's the intrinsic value argument with money.
Right. Okay. And my other question is convertibility into other currencies, FRNs or whatever. How difficult is that?
You got a smartphone, you can buy some right now from me. That's how easy it is.
Well, no, I'm talking about larger quantities. For example, you talked about moving money overseas. And, I suspect that, when the crap hits the fan, a lot of people will be looking for a way to get overseas. And obviously, the borders will be shut down. The means of transporting money will be shut down. So how would you be able to move a large amount of money via Bitcoin unless you had vendors in multiple countries that were able to convert to the local currencies? Is that infrastructure in place?
Well, the point is not to use the local currencies. The point is to use Bitcoin in those other countries, because many other countries do accept Bitcoin, so you wouldn't even have to worry about that. You could travel anywhere. I could get on a plane, go pretty much any major city in the world and use Bitcoin.
There's always local, kind of peer-to-peer exchanges like local Bitcoins. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, if you wanted to move from the U.S. to Argentina, let's say, and you hopped on a plane, you brought your laptop, you had your Bitcoins on there, or you had them in a web wallet, you didn't even have to bring your laptop. You get to Argentina and you need to buy some food. Okay, well, you can go meet someone through local Bitcoins, the website, and convert your Bitcoins into the local currency. Or you could maybe just use your Bitcoins directly to buy some food or whatever else you needed. Mm-hmm. It really depends because, one of the pressure points, and this is a really great point that you raised, one of the pressure points is that governments are going to try to exploit is on the exchanges that exchange Bitcoin into fiat and vice versa. So if we can get around exchanges by either trading locally with just individuals or perhaps going to countries, maybe doing some geo arbitrage or kind of going to countries where they're more friendly to Bitcoin exchanges, then that could probably work just fine.
Okay, thanks.
The other part too is converting dollars to Bitcoin right now is not the easiest thing unless unless it's peer to peer. So if you wanted to transact a large quantity of dollars to Bitcoin, it might if it's like $10,000 into Bitcoin, it might be kind of difficult to do with our community. But to plug Lamassu, that machine is for that particular thing. You can Lamasu's it's a Bitcoin machine, not an ATM, I guess, right?
Bitcoin vending machine.
Thank you.
Great.
It's amazing. You shove in dollars and it sends you Bitcoin. It's amazing. It's wonderful. Use it at PorkFest. It was instant. It was so fast and slick. I loved it. There you go.
One follow-up to what you were saying or your question. I know there's stories. I'll be brief. There's stories about people going to other countries from obviously the United States or wherever. It doesn't really matter. But they arrange things through local Bitcoin and other sort of meetup sites where as soon as they get to the airport, there's someone waiting to buy the Bitcoins off of them with local currency that they'll need. And you don't need to carry. I mean, you're not going to cash out $1 million worth of currency.
Just cash on hand for that trip.
Yeah, you cash out what you need to spend, so you don't have a lot of risk in your pocket. And And in fact, if you go to places like Venezuela, you're going to get more currency for your Bitcoin because they want Bitcoins bad, and so the demand is so great, and the scarcity is what it is at a very metered rate, and you're going to get more bang for your buck.
Yeah, I just read a story. Sorry, I just read a story on Reddit where a guy posted like, "Emergency! I lost my wallet at the airport, and now I'm flying to like Switzerland or something." He was a U.S. guy. And he was just like, I got some Bitcoins I can sell, and it's like I lost my wallet, and I need some money so I can get some stuff. And he managed to work it all out. I think the Reddit community helped in some way. It was pretty cool, though. I just saw it posted yesterday.
Cool. All right. Well, does anybody have any final thoughts? I think we're going to end off the panel here soon.
Stop using dollars.
Use Bitcoin.
Thanks, Ian.
Yeah, thanks, Ian.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mandrik, Matthew, JJ. Great panel. And thanks, Ian.
Okay, there we go. Tell me you didn't love that. I mean, actually, just being able to listen to Stephanie for, an hour is a joy in itself, let alone it being such an incredibly informative, panel and having such great guests on. That was really a great time. And the people asking the questions, again, they were great questions to ask. So one of the ones that I want to get to, though, is the question about the fact that, somehow if we could just do like these rotating keys or whatever, and that would stop quantum computing because it would just keep everything guessing. Well, the problem is that idea that Bitcoin could thwart quantum computing by, essentially just shifting its keys all the time. I may not be using the exact proper terminology on that. Please do not email me or put me on Bitcoin on the Bitcoin forum or whatever saying, well, Brian Sovryn said this, blah, blah, blah. I'm just saying that any kind of security that can be brought up against quantum computing that does not include the use of a quantum computer in and of itself, I consider fruitless. I consider it won't. Any set of keys that you could set up, any kind of cryptography, in my opinion, that you could set up digitally for Bitcoin to thwart off a quantum computer. Now, I said digitally. Digital and quantum are two different things, okay? I don't think is going to work because the quantum computer is just going to be able to outguess the ones and zeros of the digital machine, of the digital encryption. Okay, and JJ brought up a great point on the panel saying, the barrier to entry into getting a quantum computer is just too high right now. Who has quantum computers? Google and the government. That's it. Google with all the money in the world and the government with, the printing press. Those are the only two people that have quantum computers, all right? So the idea that somehow, activists or whatever, will life find a way? Maybe. Maybe somebody will 3D print a quantum computer, but it's not that simple because like JJ said, what it takes to cool one of these damn things, is so expensive. The electric bill, is going to run in the millions of dollars every month just to run it. So you've got kind of a problem there. Okay. Admittedly, you have a problem. Now, this is why I've always said that Bitcoin may not be the currency of the future, but it will be the easiest way to get what is. So I'm not saying do not get Bitcoin. I'm not insulting Bitcoin. Okay? I'm not at all. I'm just saying that these are things to be aware of. These are things to look out for. All right? Just like you look out for, if you're investing in stocks or whatever, you look where the government's putting their money, and that's the stock you want to bet on. Yes, you don't want to fund the government, but guess what? Where the government puts their money is usually where stocks rise. Okay, so this is the same deal. Keep an eye on quantum computing, see where it's going. For me, that's the place to watch the market from. As far as Bitcoins go. Anyway, so just an incredibly informative panel. I thought it was rock solid. Both panels were great. It was a great afternoon. I do recommend, after Stephanie and I did our panels, there was Brian Tan was on. He was a former prison guard in Keene, in the Keene area, and he a jail guard in the Keene area, and he put on an incredible. I mean, he had so many wonderful things to say. So do look out for that. I didn't include it here. Actually, I think if you go to the Pork Therapy website, there's also you can also get this audio. But then Stephanie included Brian Tan's talk in her audio. So if you really do want to catch that, go for it and catch it. Go to porktherapy.com, porctherapy.com, and you can download it there. And it's really worth seeing. If not, or listening to, and if not, just you can see it when the video gets released, and I totally recommend it. Anyway, here is your bonus content. I told you we'd have some coming up. We've got more coming out next week. I will have another special coming out next week, guaranteed. And of course, the regular episode of Sovryn Tech, they never ever stop. Thank you so much. The audience is growing. I love it. I'm really, really, really pleased. I'm getting about 25% growth in audience every month, and that's really it's really invigorating, quite frankly. So thank you so much. If you're sharing Sovryn Tech around to your friends or acquaintances, I really appreciate you doing that on whatever venue you do that through. Also, again, if you go to sovryntech.com and if you look at the top left, there's a little symbol that says Bitcoin. You can click on that and it'll show you the QR code or the physical address. And, thank you for everyone that has donated so far. They are really, really appreciated. And of course, at the bottom left, there are also affiliate links that you can click on for various things. And so all of that really helps out the show. Again, I hope you enjoyed these panels. I enjoyed them. I had a great time doing them. Glad that they're available to you. Ian Freeman was very, very kind about getting this audio to me very quickly. So couldn't be happier. Anyway, Carpe Lucem. I'll see you later.
This has been Sovryn Tech. Visit us at sovryntech.com. That's SOVRYN tech.com. There you can connect with us, see more of what you've heard on today's show, and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is open source. We encourage you to share. Later, nerds.